Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's a regular meeting of the Lammersville Unified School District Board of Education. Tonight, September 21st, I call this meeting to order at 7 p.m. At this time, I'd like to introduce Jennifer Bogle from Bethany School, who's going to introduce our students for the pledge. And for information, everyone, the meeting is being recorded. And at this time, if you'd please silence your cell phones, that'd be appreciated.
All right, good evening. Tonight, I have the pleasure of introducing 4 of our Bethany Bobcat Scholars. These are our ASB officers. We have Tessa Gervas, our president, John Little, our vice president, Andrea Larson, our treasurer, and Jamila Bynum, our secretary. They're going to be presenting leading us in the flag salute, and then they're going to be talking to you guys about the 7 habits of happy kids and successful teens. Okay?
Good.
All right.
Mouthful.
Please rise for the flag salute. Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated.
Thank you.
This year, the ASB leadership students will be going into the classrooms at Bethany to teach lessons based off the book 7 Habits of Happy Kids. Each month, we will focus on one of the 7 habits. The 7 habits are 1. Be proactive. 2. Begin with the end in mind. 3. Put first things first. 4. Think win-win. 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. 6. Synergize. And 7. Sharpen the saw. These habits also align with the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens book, which is being used in the leadership class to teach us how to be effective teens.
In each lesson, the class will watch a video of the story being read, discuss what story was about using guided reading questions, then participate in some sort of activity that correlates with the habit. These activities are grade level appropriate so that all students are engaged. The lessons and activities are planned and created by the leadership students with guidance of ASB and leadership teachers.
These lessons build leaders and help students be successful no matter what their age or grade level. Some of the activities are brainstorming things we could do on a board, coloring characters that are in a book, acting out skills, writing down goals, creating goal posters, and much more.
We are very excited to use these 2 books in both our leadership class and with the whole school. We are just finishing up the first habit in our leadership class and can already see a difference in how it is impacting our lives both at school and at home. We cannot wait to see the changes that our lessons will bring to the school.
Go Bobcats.
Woo! Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you for your service. And I love the spirit wear.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Roll call, please.
Matthew Balzerini.
Here.
Colin Clements.
Here.
Sharon Lampill.
Here.
Shane Nielsen.
Here.
David Pombo.
Here.
Samantha D. Tiberis.
Here.
Approval and/or corrections to the agenda?
There are none. Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Committee reports. Item A, facilities use.
We did have our meeting last week. Unfortunately, it was sparsely attended, especially given the concerns with relates to the high school track issue that we addressed and discussed, and I thought resolved, at least for the most part, with the panel. We do have a recommendation for some changes to the handbook regarding, actually, excuse me, not to the handbook, to administrative regulations related to the sizes of advertising that's going on at the elementary school sites. Overall, though, it was rather a long meeting, even though there wasn't a whole lot of public input, mostly from trying to talk through some of the changes. And the committee is very strongly in support of getting an early start on the new facilities as it relates to the pool and the theater. We explained that the pool issue is something we need to continue to meet with the CSD about, and we do need to try to figure out how about reaching out to figure out who they're going to put back on their Joint Use Committee, since both of their members of the Joint Use Committee are no longer on their board. But really, at least to start trying to get ahead of a plan and an idea for the theater and the pool. I suggested that they reach out to our principal because he might be able to get us some information from his prior site, which had a community use theater, so we could get some ideas and plans and suggestions to go along with that use. And then to reach out to some of the other communities that do have open use pools, so we could try to start getting that. And I thought a good time to start that conversation might be right around December. Sounded like a nice round figure for me, sounded pretty good. So we decided, but in all honesty, it's if we can start getting something, I think sooner rather than later, for whatever reason, the public's trust, we're still having a hard time earning, and it was actually Mr. Strock's recommendation, and I absolutely agree. The theater is going to be a big ticket item. The pool is going to be the biggest ticket item, I think, in the district, and we've got to try to get something in sight and planned for when we can do that. And if we're going to put any delays on public use of those facilities, that we start talking about that early, so it's not grand opening, don't use it for a year. If we're going to make that decision, we should make that decision early so the public doesn't feel like, again, bait and switch is the term that's been bandied about. So overall, though, I thought it was a productive meeting. I thought it was a good meeting, and I'm hoping to get more public participation. Okay, questions? Nope, okay.
Item B, District Advisory Committee.
I don't think the next meeting is on the calendar yet.
Item C, District English Language Advisory Committee.
The next meeting is scheduled for September 29th at 6:30 in the Altamont Library.
Item D, Gate Arts Music.
We have our first meeting of the school year on Tuesday next, the 27th, right here, I believe, in this room, right? So, looking forward to it.
Item E, Grant Writing Committee.
The meeting is this coming Monday at 6:30. Is that in here? Okay.
And item F, Safety and Crisis Response. We met today. We did have a discussion about bullying. There seems to be some issues with that going on, so we talked about training for students and also having some potential training for parents as well, and identifying things like that, of that nature. Good conversation, more to come on that. Today was kind of the kickoff meeting for the school year, so we talked about process, talked about having drills, equipment, covered a lot of different topics in a short amount of time. But good momentum, also long discussion on cameras, and it's gone back now. Our district maintenance operations is going to go talk to the site principals to look at needs, survey each school individually, bring that back to committee to talk about what we desire, and then look at the budget and see what we can afford. All that information, of course, will be coming back to the board eventually. So, but very productive meeting. Item G, Wellness.
We had a wellness committee on September 14th. Dr. Gill gave a presentation on recess and lunch period times. A lengthy discussion was held with possible pros and cons of lengthening lunch and recess times. More information will be gathered and discussed further at a future meeting. We also discussed the sweets being consumed at school and whether or not we want to make a recommendation for any limiting policies. We also discussed anti-bullying programs and possible changes to the wellness policy and related board policies. Our next meeting is October 12th.
Very good. Governing board reports. Samantha Tiberis.
So I'm very happy to report that homecoming this past Friday was very successful. The football teams both won, and not that I'm keeping record or anything, but the class of 2018 won the float building contest for the second year in a row.
Not keeping score.
Nice. No competition. Very good.
That's it.
Thank you so much, and good job, dance team.
Thank you.
Trustee Clemens?
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to hearing more about bullying when the committees can bring that out. I also attended the away football games in Waterford a couple of weeks ago. The JV team won since the varsity team was ahead at halftime. I thought they were going to pull out their first victory, but ultimately they were not successful 2 weeks ago. But as my fellow board member mentioned, both the JV and the varsity team won last Friday here at homecoming, so that was an appropriate first win. It is the first win for the varsity football team of Mountain House High School, so it was a very momentous day. And since my son does play varsity football, I was very excited to see the W in the win. I also wanted to personally congratulate the speech and debate team for doing outstandingly well at the tournament in Lodi this past weekend. 3 two-person debate teams went undefeated, and I won't mention all of their names because I would butcher most of them, but I did want to mention that one of our former fellow board members, Pasa Pungchai, was one of those undefeated, so I want to wish her specifically congratulations. And then lastly, if it would be appropriate, I would like to donate $250 plus tax. I think these are about 20. This is the Brown Act, and I would like to donate $250 to the school district to purchase the CSBA's Brown Act books and make them available for future candidates at their request. I think that it's a valuable piece of literature that I think a person that's a candidate for school board should probably know and understand their rights, rules, obligations under the Brown Act. That's it for me, sir.
Very nice.
It's very generous.
Very generous. Trustee Pombo?
I attended the PTSA meeting at Mountain House High School where officers were elected, bylaws were revised, and plans for the upcoming year were discussed. As discussed previously, I attended the Facilities Use Committee meeting and the Wellness Committee meetings, the VAPA Boosters meeting where bylaws were revised and plans for the upcoming year were reviewed. I also attended the Mountain House High School Athletics Boosters meeting where discussions revolved around supporting our sports teams and upcoming fundraisers. I had the pleasure of watching the Mountain House Homecoming Parade. That is a very, very fun event, seeing all the K-8 students walking with their school floats and the Mountain House High School groups and clubs, football players, and of course our Mountain House High School marching band sounded fantastic as usual. Later that night, I had the pleasure of witnessing both of our JV and varsity Mustangs played a convincing wins over the Livingston Wolves, and it was very nice to see the stands nearly full of cheering fans. The cheerleaders, dance team, and Mustang marching band also gave very entertaining performances. That is my report. Thank you.
Trustee Lempel?
Unfortunately, I've missed most of the events lately due to a variety of reasons. But I'm glad to hear that the district is addressing some bullying issues that are happening around Mountain House. And besides the discipline, the district is in the process of identifying the educational pieces that we will take our children through so the bullying stops. It's not just the punishment. We have to address the cause and change some point of views. I am happy to report that Lammersville had the most professional display at a job fair on Monday. They outshone every other district that was at that job fair. It was incredible. So it's very impressive for me to stand in a room and say, that's my district, that display over there. So good job to the staff.
Very nice.
Very good.
Trustee Nielsen?
I was able to attend the Mountain House High School Homecoming Parade, the Lammersville Homecoming Parade. I'm not sure I want to call it because I love that we include our K-8 schools. I love their floats, seeing the kids and the principals participate from our K-8 schools. It really just, for me, continues to foster that sense of community that we're trying to have in the schools. It addresses some of the other ancillary issues that we were talking about today as well. But I just love seeing one of our board members and her dance team going about stuff. It was just, and the uniqueness of it. You know, most of the other homecoming parades you're going to see, they're just going to ride around the circle on the football track, and it's the 4 floats and you're done. And to see them going from the park all the way down to the school, you know, almost like an entrance to homecoming. I love it. I love the plan. I love the idea, and it's an absolute blast. Unfortunately for myself, I'm an idiot with my phone and didn't get to record any of it because I hit the picture button instead of the record button. So I got one picture of the back of my daughter's head. It was great. It was great. I've also, you know, I love hearing about the debate teams, the sports teams, you know, the continued growth and excellence and hard work that our students are putting in, both at the K-8 schools and at the high school. Lastly, I had a huge, long, boring speech written out regarding the negativity of this community as it relates to the Mountain House Facebook page, and recognized, at least for myself, that it wasn't worth the paper it's written on. For whatever reason, this community doesn't want to trust this district and this board, and I just don't understand it for the life of me. We have been nothing but fiscally responsible, professionally responsible in every possible way. And in this most recent incident with regards to closing the track after it was explained, yes, the track was open in the summer until school started, and then the marching band started and football started and everything else. Rather than understanding, appreciating, or even thanking, they decided to turn their venom on our high school band teacher. I just don't understand it. Questioning that he actually does hold the practices that Mr. Pombo explained his son attends on Saturdays for about 7 or 8 hours. I don't get it. I don't understand it. And quite honestly, I'm done. I'm one of the main reasons I'm leaving this board in November is because I can't figure out how to get you as a community on Facebook to trust us. And it's exhausting. It's tiring, it's frustrating, it's aggravating. And I can only say, I will say this, and it'll be the last time I talk about the Mountain House Facebook page. I only hope to God that the newest members of this board get more time and respect than you gave Mr. Clements before you turned on him too. That the new board gets some respect, trust, and appreciation before you start distrusting the entire group again. I don't understand it, and I can only hope that someone will look at it and recognize all you're doing is tearing down good, hardworking people with no justification. And that's the end of my report.
I was unable to attend the parade, but I am thankful for all the folks that posted the videos on social media so I could watch, because it looked really neat. I did make it to the football game. That was great. Glad we got a win. And then this last weekend, I spent Saturday and Sunday in Sacramento at CSBA for our board of directors meeting. The one thing I did want to bring back for this board, CSBA has taken a stand, and they would really like all school boards to consider passing resolutions in support of Prop 51 and 55. So for the superintendent, I request that we have on the next agenda for this board to consider adopting resolutions in support of those propositions. Proposition 55 specifically, we need that. If we don't get that passed, we're going to be in some serious financial trouble. So that's all I really have. Long weekend in Sacramento, but
I would just like to add one more thing that I neglected to mention earlier, about the homecoming game and festivities. One of the biggest things that most people don't realize about homecoming is the fact that it is alumni returning. And my daughter is one of the few alumni that Mountain House High School has at this point, and there was a big contingent of her classmates. I would guesstimate that 30-something of the 47 graduates attended the game, and that was neat to see.
very neat. And for as much work as it is to be pioneers in this community, those kinds of things are very, very special. So that was really neat to see. I agree.
That is super awesome.
Do you have something else you wanted to add about Colin, about Wicklund? That parent, did you want to make note of that now?
You've,
I think he did.
oh,
Oh, did you?
no, I'm sorry. My suggestion was before I understood what
Okay.
really happened.
Very
I
good.
apologize,
No
Mr.
problem.
President.
No problem. Thank you. Receiving a public comment. If anyone would like to speak, we ask that you fill out a card in the back. I do have one comment card. Public comment is held for 3 minutes to address the board, and is an opportunity to speak to the board. The board cannot engage in discussion. First speaker is Mr. Hari Katana.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to each one of you in the board here and the audience as well for the wonderful opportunity. My name is Hari Katana, and I'm actually a volunteer and a facilitator for the Art of Living organization, and also a founder for the Mountain House Kindness Club. As a matter of fact, the Kindness Club was recently featured in the Tracy Press for facilitating and felicitating, I should say, the service leaders of our community, the firefighters, the police people, as well as the MHC-SD. So that's something that we basically focused upon. So the reason why I'm here today is to really talk about one dream. Like the great Martin Luther King did mention, I do have a dream as well. I really do have a dream. And it's simple and hopefully really profound. I want to make sure that I do whatever I can in my capacity to make Mountain House schools the very best in the Bay Area in 3 years' time. Schools are the temple of knowledge, right? For all of us, especially our students. Students go to these schools with the hope that they can one day become great citizens of the world. They look up to our teachers for inspiration, for knowledge. But what we have today, teachers are under tremendous amount of stress. Every single day of the week, they manage 30 to 35 different students with different behavioral patterns, different kinds of learning abilities, right? And they are parents too. They've got tremendous amount of stress. So when teachers are stressed, what happens is that it is a direct reflection on the students as well. They become combative. They have a sense of fear about being able to ask questions. The Art of Living organization has got a strong footprint out here in Mountain House, as well as across the world in about 180 different countries. They have actually changed the world of education by being able to introduce critical breathing techniques, meditation, and yoga for students and teachers. I asked the board for an opportunity to actually come to your office and actually present to you our plan to make this dream a reality by way of meditation, breathing techniques, and the yoga for our teachers who are our inspiration for our students. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. I would suggest you contact Dr. Gill.
Okay.
She can help you with your desires.
Thank you so very much
you.
for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. President, could I add one other thing? I totally forgot this, and I hope everyone saw it. I want to move to something positive. There's a fantastic article in the Contra Costa Times on Friday, I think it was, Friday, and it's unfortunate that she left, that spotlighted members of our staff and his spouse in an article about how they met, how they got married, and their family. Mr. Gervais and his wife were spotlighted in just a beautiful article about how they met, how they dated. It was really great stuff, and if you need a copy, I can send you a link. But it was such a fun read, because it was really, this is how they met. They met at a library, and roommates trying to talk them into meeting each other, and it was great. It was so much fun to read, and it was kind of insight into their relationship and their family, and it's just, I hope people get a chance to read it, because Mr. Gervais is, one of the members of the community that not just participating in the school, but outside soccer and a bunch of other different events. So I would urge anyone who hadn't taken a look at it to take a look at it. It's a great article. Thank you. I apologize.
No problem. Consent items for consideration. Item A, approval of governing board meeting minutes from September 7th. Item B, budget revisions and warrants. Item C, approval of contracts under 25,000, there's 2. Item D, approval of the 16-17 hires, there's 3. Approval of updated 2016-17 fundraisers. Those are the items. We could take any off to discuss individually or vote altogether.
I don't necessarily want to pull any one item out, but I would like some additional color on one of the items in there.
Sure. Go ahead, which one?
In subpoint B on page 8 of the packet, I'd like a little bit more color on the $1.1 million difference between the two budgets.
As you see on here, it doesn't show beginning balance, ending balance, and so what often happens is money is received in the prior year and kind of sits in the ending fund balance, and if it's spent the following year, that's when we recognize it in the budget. And so you see a big part of that here being the energy grant. The money has come in prior years, but we're budgeting it this year to encumber the PO and to spend in the future. And then also we had 2 non-public school contracts that the Director of Special Education has brought forward, and I believe one may be in this packet tonight.
So it's not really a swing in the in the expenditures in total. It's a swing in the timing of
That is
expenditures.
correct. And I very often have to watch over what's one time versus what's ongoing. And what you see here, that swing of the expense is one time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I move we approve the consent items in total.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And I'd like to welcome the following new employees.
Yes, this is a new tradition. Trustee Lampel in her real life works in HR, so she's going to introduce our new hires. Thank you.
So I'd like to welcome Lindsay Hausman, self-contained classroom teacher, Sharon Penteleon, self-contained classroom teacher, and Juan Raimundo, custodian and security 3. Welcome to our Lammersville family.
Welcome. May I just make one comment, which is that I don't want to steal Trustee Lampel's thunder, but the welcome really is from all 5 of us, or from and the district staff. It's
God, you gotta steal.
I heard a comment saying that, oh, she's so nice, she welcomes everyone. It's like, well, I would do that, but only when.
It's all 5 of us do it. All 5 of us will read all the names.
all welcome.
That should be
We
fun.
can practice
just reads
reading the
them.
names in unison, okay?
You start them, I'll finish them.
You can read them and we'll lip sync along.
Next item is district administrative reports. Item A, superintendent's report.
So I just wanted to piggyback real quick on Trustee Clement's shout out to our speech and debate team. I have a little bit more information. I too am not going to read off the names. I thought we'd call the kids in later on and acknowledge them in person. So the speech and debate team, also known as Forensic, had their first tournament, and it was at Lodi High School against 15 other schools. We had 6 students who went 3-0 undefeated, including our former board of trustee person. I also saw our current board of student trustee leading the dance leadership team along the way in the parade, and they were making some nice moves out there. So I wanted to acknowledge her as well. I did take a picture, but I don't know if you wanted to see that.
Probably not.
All right, so the competition categories are pretty cool sounding. So I thought I'd read those out. We had students place in the area of impromptu. We had students place in the area which is called duo, which is a 2-person interpretive event. We had students place in dramatic interpretation, and we also had students place in oratorical interpretation. So not only are we announcing our presence with authority, but we also are multifaceted in our skill set. So what I don't know, and I apologize, and it's not here, it's like cut off in the email, is the coach's last name. So I'm embarrassed to say, but I want to thank, what's that? Coach McCoy and all the other volunteers that are helping out, because I have a feeling that there'll be lots of kids in T-shirts over the years getting awards in this area, and they're going to make us proud, like a lot of our other programs. Also, speaking of proud, we got the official acknowledgement from the county, so I want to compliment our CBO and her team. Our official LCAP and district budget has passed the county, and when you understand the oversight that goes to the county and the state on LCAP, getting that approved is a big deal. So congratulations.
Congratulations.
We can write checks.
Thank you very much.
And then I want to talk a little bit about traffic and do a quick explanation to the community and the board. Not everything originates from our district. and we love everyone. But there was a comedy of errors, the Keystone Cops, whatever you want to call it, where well-intended projects all start at the same time, which include re-putting in the roadways, which is needed, landscape maintenance along Mustang Way at the same time, along with the beginning of school of 1,100 plus students. I want to thank General Manager Ed Pattison. We called him, and he was very cooperative and reminded all of the people that work for the CSD to not interfere. In fact, there's an agreement not to interfere with the start of school. We have a little work to do in the area of landscaping along Mustang, and we've made additional contacts with the CSD. We also had a construction meeting today, and I was assured by Turner Construction on our end that their big deliveries and big trucks will be coming in before the rush of traffic or after the end of the day. So not everything will ever be perfect, but that is the plan. So the traffic problem on Monday was what we'll call a comedy of errors now that everybody's not mad. And two, we will make sure that we can get the landscaping stopped while kids are getting dropped off to the best of our ability.
Dr. Nicholas, can I just say that Monday as I was driving to work and saw the cones, I thought three things. Number one, this is going to be a disaster. Number two, we had nothing to do with it. And number three, we are going to catch heck on Facebook.
Yes, it was all our fault, I'm sure. Yeah.
And then there was also a traffic accident in another part of town, which funneled people out to the parkways. So, in the end, we'll work with our partners out there to do the best we can. Dropping off kids and their safety is our number one priority. So we'll keep communicating with our friends out there. That is all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Item B, assessment data presentation, CAST, MAP, and advanced placement. Ms. Sherman.
Good evening, trustees and superintendent. It's my pleasure to be here again to share the success and achievement of all of the hard work of our students and the hard work of our staff. Everybody puts a great deal of effort into making sure that our students are receiving the best education that we can possibly deliver, and we have some information to share with you in looking at the results and fruits of those labors in one aspect of their lives and how we're helping to prepare them to be college and career ready. So one of the things that we want to do is that when we are looking at the assessment data that comes at us in many different formats, is that we want to make sure that we're looking at it in different lights and different perspectives and different ways to really give us information about how our students are doing. In education speak, we call that looking at multiple measures, and we call that drilling down into the data. So looking at multiple measures means we're going to look at a variety of different assessment types. The what that's there on the slide, looking at state testing like CASP and CELT, other types of testing like advanced placement testing, and really digging in to see what that says. The who is really that we need to look at a variety of populations because, of course, we want to look at the entire district's achievement overall, but it's very important that we're looking at the grade levels and we're looking at the different content areas, and then we're looking at different ethnicities and different student populations like English learners or our special education students, because it's important to us that we're making sure that the program that we're providing is really preparing all students in all areas for making sure that we're providing a quality program for college and career readiness. And then lastly, you see the bullet up here that says trends over time. And trends over time is a really important part that we look at and we monitor, because that gives us a lot of information to say, is the professional development that we're providing making a difference? Are the interventions that we have in place helping support the students that we are trying to make sure are getting the support that they need? are we building a curriculum that is really supporting each of the students, or do we need to make different decisions with our curriculum? So looking at the data in those three ways is really an important tool that we have to do. And in reality, it's a lot like being a detective. So we can put a lot of educationese to it, but really what it is being a detective and using our lens and flipping that lens a lot of different directions in order to look at it and tell a whole story and get the complete picture of what is going on with all of the students within Lammersville. So we'll start looking at the data here. And the first assessment, the first measure in our multiple measures that we're going to look at is the advanced placement testing. And as you know, our high school is new and we have these wonderful AP testing results here. So what you'll see on the left-hand side there is that we had 112 students out of really what's a very small high school population still. 112 students take 185 AP tests in 9 different areas that you see there on the bottom of the pie on the left-hand side there. The number within the different slices of the pie is what percentage of students scored at a 3 or higher on their AP test there. So you can see exactly how they did. In summary, overall, that's the big pie in the middle. 66% of our students in Lammersville achieved a 3 or higher on those tests. So that is an amazing passing rate already. And if you compare that to the pie on the right, you can see that we surpassed already, just going out, just starting with a brand new high school and AP testing and AP classes, we've surpassed the national and state percentage for passing rate. So kudos to our high school. Thank you. I like that applause too. The next measure we're going to look at is our CST science test here. I'll point out that this is likely, we expect the last year that we're going to have this piece of data in this exact format because the state is transitioning to next generation science standards. And with that is coming a new science test. The rumor mill has it right now that they will do pilot testing across the state for the new science test this year. I have yet to get the official word on that. So this will likely be the last data that we have. But as we look at this, at the 3 grade levels that testing is done, it's the first year and only year that we have 10th graders testing there. We can see that all of our students are really doing very well at the different grade levels across the schools. And with a few exceptions, they're scoring between 60 and 75% proficient in the area of science. So moving on to what is a really big measure in our multiple measures is our state CAS comparisons. I'm looking at English language arts and in math. So in a nutshell, I can say that we've done very well. We have 62% proficient in English language arts and 52% proficient in math this year. And what you see on the slide in front of you is a comparison of Lammersville School District to the state to the county. The green bar graphs are English language arts, the blue bar graphs are math, and you're looking at a comparison of 2015 to 2016. So not only are we far surpassing the state and the county percentages, but we also beat ourselves with improvement in both language arts and math this year. So kudos again to our students and staff for all of their hard work. So now we want to drill down a little bit deeper, flip our lens and look at it and add another layer to this picture. So on this chart, you can see the state and county lines that are there with the red being the county and the blue being the state. And then on the left, we have language arts and math. And the different colors of the bar graph are representing the different school districts within the area that are similar to us within the county and then just over the pass to Livermore, looking at it. And what we can see is that we are still the highest achieving district in the area in our county and just over the hill for both language arts and math. So that's the second year in a row. And you can see that bar is way up there above the state and county line. So we are quite proud of how we are doing in comparison to our surrounding neighbors. While we, of course, want to continue to grow, we are making a really strong showing. So this is an example of a chart that we would use at the district and the school site level to look at it and drill down just a little bit farther. So if we know that all of our students in general are doing well, let's start looking at which students do we need to help a little bit more. So on this chart, you see 62% have met that proficiency level. And in that area where you have the 38% there, I want to focus your attention on the yellow band. And that yellow band are the students, they're labeled as nearly meeting standard. So they're very close. They're doing well in school, but they have not quite met every little thing that they need to do in order to get up to being considered proficient. If you pair that information with all of the information that's at the bottom of this slide, that's how students are doing in each one of the areas of language arts: reading, writing, listening, and research inquiry. So those students in the yellow, paired with the information that reading is still our weakest area overall, tells us that we need to spend more time focusing in on that reading strand to help support those students in that yellow band in particular with moving along that continuum towards proficiency. Now, I would speculate that this is probably likely due to the fact that we have an increase in text complexity under the shift to Common Core and an increase in the expectation around citing text and annotating text that is just really different for us. So it tells us we need to provide some additional professional development, most likely, and we need to continue to look at interventions that are going to help support those students instructionally. So this is the same chart, but for the area of math as we look at it. So I'll draw your attention to that yellow bar again, where we have nearly 30% of our students very close to meeting proficiency in that nearly meeting proficient strand. And if we look at that with the information at the bottom of the chart, our weakest area again this year is still concept development and procedures. This information tells us that, again, we need to really round out the shift in Common Core is that it's not enough to have memorized math facts, that we have to make sure that students understand the math behind it, that they have the reasoning and the analysis skill in order to be able to do it, and they have to be able to explain that. So they have to have that conceptual understanding of math. What it tells me is that the shifts that we started to make already with really making sure in our professional development that teachers understand the mathematical practices and the new things that we've built into the curriculum in our RCD 2.0 where there's a strong emphasis on concept development are leading us in that right direction. And I think that we're going to see some good shifts in supporting those students who are almost at proficiency. So then shifting our lens again and looking at it a little bit differently, continuing to be a detective, we wanted to look at each one of the grade levels within our school district at each one of the school sites. And how are they doing? Because this will give us a picture about, do we have something that systematically across our district we need to look at for a particular grade level? Is there a school where we have a particular issue? And how do we best go about providing support in that area, whether that's professional development or specific intervention to support students? And you can see that within language arts, which is what this slide is, again, almost all of them are exceeding the county and the state by quite a bit of a level. Every grade level at every school site, except for just a couple, are meeting or exceeding those expectations. So we still want to do better than that, though. We want to look at and see where do we need to make those shifts. And this tells us that we have some real highlights. We also have a few lower areas. And so there's where we need to get in, work with the site administrators, work with the teachers at that grade level, reanalyze our curriculum, and provide the additional support in those areas. This is the same chart in the area of math. You can see again that we still have, overall, we have variability among the grade levels. All of our schools at different times are showing real strengths. So we don't have systematically a huge problem. We just have some pockets of need is what we can really see there. And again, every one of them, with one exception, is meeting or exceeding the county and state expectations. So on this graph, this is a chart from the state that shows the bar graph of proficiency for the grade levels. But what I've done is I've then put the overall proficiency at the bottom of it. And this is bringing out that looking at it over time and looking for shifts and changes. So I've color-coded it to showing green where the percentages show an improvement for that grade level, black being that they stay the same. And if we had anywhere that there were a decline, we would have those scores in red. And we have no decline. In fact, we have 3 specific grade levels that have growth. Of course, the high school only has 1 year of scores, so that's not a growth or a non-growth. It's just an initial year of score. And overall, we had growth. So this is a good picture. In the bottom of it, we also take that multiple measure layer and we layer that on. So in that purple box, those are the MAP spring test scores. And I'll remind you that MAP is the testing that we use as a district metric in order to monitor progress over time as an indicator that helps us see what we might expect to see on our state CASP testing. So we have something with more frequency to give us an idea if we're headed the right direction. And what we see with those MAP scores is that in general, there's a pretty consistent scoring there. It's not that much disparate. And where it is a little bit different, MAP is actually harder on us than our CASP testing is on us. So it tells us that this is a pretty good indicator, a pretty good metric for us to continue to use to get information about how our students are doing ongoing during the year instead of waiting for that one test at the end of the school year for CASP. And then this would be the same chart, looking at it from the perspective of math. I want to point out all that green. This is really exciting to see how many grade levels, again, the high school having only 1 year of score, so that doesn't really count. But with only 8th grade as the exception, we had growth across everything. So that is just outstanding. Again, in the bottom purple rectangle there, those are the spring MAP scores that we've taken approximately at the same time, and they are relatively similar across, again, indicating that this is a good metric for us to be using. So flipping that lens, keeping that detective hat on, we say, okay, so we know grade level, we know district-wide, we know the different areas, how we're doing overall. Now we want to look at it for math in blue, the blue bar, English language arts in the red bar. How are different populations of students for the different ethnicities that we have doing? So I apologize that the program I was using to pull this data out did not show the entire name. So let me tell you what the name of that different ethnicity is. The first one is American Indian. We have Asian, Black or African American, Filipino, Hispanic, Native Hawaiian, 2 or more races, white, and then the one without a label on it is that it's not disclosed. The race is not disclosed. So I can share with you that the American Indian and the Native Hawaiian population counts are really low. We have very few students in those areas. We do have a significant number of students in the Black or African American population and the Hispanic population, though. And if you look at those, we have a gap in achievement between our overall population, our Asian and our white Filipino populations, and that Black, African American, and Hispanic population. So that tells us we need to dig in a little bit farther and see what is going on for those 2 subpopulations. What do we need to do in order to serve those students better to make sure that they are college and career ready as well? Another source that we can use, because we don't want to rely on just one source, so a multiple measure is now taking that same CAST data and we're looking at it by different subpopulations of our English learners, our Hispanics, our African American population, and our special ed populations. And I've superimposed on top of that looking at the fall MAP data that we just finished. And what we can see from looking at those 2 sources of data is that there are similar trends. So we're seeing again that MAP is a reliable indicator even when we're looking at the different subpopulations, and we're seeing the similar trend to say that our English learners are still a big area of need. Some of those of whom are going to fall into that Hispanic population, but we also have English learners from other ethnic backgrounds, and then our African American, and more expectedly, although not what we desire, our special ed population. We have an achievement gap as well. So those are areas that we'll continue to dig into. So now that we've identified through our detective work that the English learner subpopulation is one area that we need to look at a lot more closely. This is another type of a chart that has a lot of business on it for you all, and it tells us about the number of students who are proficient at various levels, and it tells us how they're doing in the different areas of language arts like reading, writing, listening, and the research and inquiry. But what I'd like you to focus on is the red and blue horizontal bar graph on the left-hand upper corner. That also adds the comparison of time for our English learners on the state testing. So while we can see that there is a horrendous amount of work that we need to do for our English learners, they are horribly being underserved and underachieving. Yet, we are headed the right direction, it would indicate, because from 2015 to 2016, we doubled the percentage that are meeting that proficiency level. So we have started to address that, and it's an indicator that the work that we are doing to address our English learners within our ELA curriculum is starting to make a difference. With the new adoption, we have a very strong ELD program in there, and we expect to see even greater improvements coming. So this is the same type of chart for the area of math. And again, I'll focus your attention on the red and blue bar graphs in the left corner. And again, while there's a whole lot of work that we need to continue to do for our English learners in the area of math, which we think of as non-language dependent, math is numbers, right? We still are seeing the growth that is there, and I will add a note that at this point in time, math is much more language dependent than it has ever been, because we're asking kids to explain, we're asking them to look at a problem and reason out of that problem, which has a lot of language skills involved in that. There's a lot of academic vocabulary involved in math, so there's a lot of language that is playing into their ability to achieve and be successful in math, in addition to just learning the math. So those are the things that we will continue to look at, but again, we are headed the right direction. So an additional measure that the state has as a requirement for looking at English learners, since we know this is a really important population for us, is the CELT testing. And CELT looks at measuring how our English learners are doing in two different ways. One, from year to year, no matter where they start as an English learner, did they make the expected amount of progress in 1 year that we would expect them to make in learning English? So it's not about their English language arts content and their math content area. It's just, are they learning more English? Are they picking up those skills? And that's what that yellow highlighted number is telling us. And generally, our students are making 1 year's progress in 1 year's time, as we would expect them to do. On the bottom, it is also looking at, out of all of the students, how many students do we have actually meeting proficiency in English, the same level of proficiency as an English-only student of the same age or in the same grade? So if I'm 5 years old and an English learner, am I now speaking the same way as a 5-year-old would speak who is an English-only student? And of course, if they've been only learning to speak English 1 or 2 years, we're not going to see as many students speaking the same as a native speaker. But by the time that we look at students who have been in the country and in school 5 or more years learning English, we would expect that those students have the proficiency in English of a native speaker the same age. So for those students who are less than 5 years, we are actually meeting that standard as well, that we are doing a good job with getting those students up to academic proficiency. However, for those students who didn't make it prior to 5 years, we are not making enough growth with those students. They're what we call them LTELs, or long-term English learners, and that is another population of students for whom we are not making the progress that we need to. So we know that there is something else going on, that they're not picking up English at the same rate that we would expect them to and need them to make, so that's going to hamper their ability to learn in language arts and in math. So this narrows it down with that detective lens a little bit farther to this is a specific population within the English learner population that needs additional attention. So what does that mean in a nutshell? Because that was a whole lot of different multiple measures and a whole lot of drilling down. So in the end, what it comes down to is that we have a whole lot to celebrate. And in fact, we were running some reports, and we'll have some information at the next board meeting to celebrate. But it looks like we had 60 students who had perfect scores on CASP testing between language arts across our district. 60 students is an amazing number. And in fact, we think, we have to verify this, but I think we have 5 students who had perfect scores on both tests. That is just unbelievable to me, to have that kind of score. Overall, as a district, we have improvement across the district in language arts and in math. We have the highest test scores in the county and over the hill comparing to Livermore. We are making growth with our English learners in ELA and math. Our AP scores are amazing and exceeding the state and county averages. In CELT, we're making that growth that we need, meeting the goals for learning English and becoming proficient. If you're less than 5 years, you're making that proficiency at the expected rate. And we know that there are some focus areas, English learners being a really big area that we have to focus in on more. We also have to spend more time looking at our Black and African American students and our special ed students. We know that overall, looking at the math claim of concepts and procedures, we need to continue on that path, and looking at that reading claim and the text complexity. So how does that relate to the next steps? Because that's the reason we look at this, is we say, how do we improve our program? How do we make sure that we're serving all of our students and provide the right professional development, the right curriculum, and the right interventions to meet student needs? And so the next steps that we've already taken is that we have our new adoption that you approved, and we've begun implementing it and providing quite a bit of professional development in those areas, and it's going really well. And we have a specific ELD component of that will help support our English learners, which we did not have in place prior to this. In 9th through 12th grade, we are really focusing on math and the mathematical practices, which we had not applied at the high school level to the same degree we had done that in the elementary level last year. K-12, we revamped the math program to really focus in, provide some solid concept development lessons and make sure that those mathematical practices are embedded. In special ed, Director Corona has already added direct instruction programs to help meet the needs of those students. And we have given a large amount of professional development in both English language arts, ELD, math. We'll continue that in October. We have an academy for our new hires to make sure that our brand new teachers to the teaching profession are getting as much support as possible. We've instituted the Blended Learning Academy, and again, we've offered more special ed training over the summer in the direct instruction programs than we've ever had in the past. So those are the new steps to help meet the goals that the data is painting that picture, and we are sure that we are going to have even better progress with all of our students being college and career ready. Thank you.
Good presentation. Questions from the board?
Yes. In the science, the CST science, even though this may be the last time we see results from that test because it's changing to the next generation, could we see at a future meeting the comparison to the previous year and see how our kids did?
Yes, we could. I can
Okay,
pull
that
that
would
up.
be great.
They don't have the state and county comparisons available right now, just so you know. That's why
I
those
want to
aren't on
compare
there.
to us. I don't care about
Yeah.
the state and county. As we move along and you drill down more, I know the information that we get from the state is overwhelming, and it takes a lot of pulling it apart. I'd like to see some cohort growth in future presentations. You know, how did these third graders do when they got to fourth grade, because it's the same kids. It's important for us to look at year after year, how is fourth grade doing, but I want to see how did those kids grow, and I know it's hard to pull that out of this data, so I don't expect you to appear with that in 2 weeks. But I would like to see some information on some cohort growth.
I can share with you with our Illuminate program that we are tweaking and digging into more. We actually are working on creating a report like that. Some preliminary information that we've started to pull is giving us some nice little snippets that are looking at cohorts that way. And it's been positive so far. So absolutely we'll bring that forward.
Because I know the way the numbers show, there's overlap between the different categories, and it's very hard to compare, and it's a lot of work. That's why I said I don't expect it in 2 weeks. It's nice to be above the county and the state, but I'd like to see a little bit more at some future board meeting about what we're doing to address the students in those red areas. The numbers are wonderfully low, but that's our target group. The kids that are almost meeting, nearly met, that's a target group, but that red area, we need to get them into the nearly met. So I'd like to hear a little bit about how we're addressing those students. And again, the numbers are wonderfully low in those red areas. And I was glad to hear that you're looking at addressing the long-term English learners. And I look forward to hearing more about that and what we're going to do, because we should not have English learners past the 5th year. We'll always have a few, but. So thank you. Fabulous presentation.
Thank you.
If I may, I'd like to put up the slide, or a slide, that deals with the, I wish I had a copy here and I could tell you which slide, where it has the expectation, stop right there, that where it talks about the expectation of the state of, the percentage of students that meet or exceed the standard, and it's lower than you might expect. And this slide kind of shows that, right? Because what I want to drill in on is that some people in the community, when they find out that the state only expects X percent of our students to meet the standard, they in the state, right? That that it's basically success through lowered expectation, right?
Can I ask a clarifier that I think might help? Is this the state expectation or the state performance?
This is the state performance,
Not the
yeah.
expectation.
But, and I think you're referencing because last year I did talk about, because it was the first time we had this test, what the state was predicting would happen on that initial test. Now they're predicting how much growth they would have when
That's
they're
right.
talking about it.
But it's still not up to 100%.
It's still low, right? Your
And
point is
so-
still correct.
And after that meeting, there were some comments in the public where it's like, oh, well, you don't even, like, you have this standard and you don't even expect our students at the state level to hit it. And so I wanted to, discuss that briefly and provide, because educational professionals, you guys get it, right? You understand, but lay people, we don't. We have to have it explained to us a little bit. And so what I wanted to do was, basically talk conceptually like fractions. You mentioned that under Common Core, we're changing. It's no longer memorization. It's, do you understand the concept and can you manipulate it? Can you actually utilize it? Forget about memorizing all your fractions. Can you utilize the concept of fractions to solve problems? And so previously, fractions were discussed, and I may be wrong, but let's say the 4th grade is when they really started honing in on fractions. Now they start conceptually talking about fractions in the 2nd grade, which means that when they develop the Common Core standard, they're assuming, I'm sorry?
First grade, actually.
First grade, there you go.
It's very early.
So this means that when they develop the standard, they're assuming a student in the 4th grade has actually been exposed to fractions in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade before they get there. There is no way when you adopt Common Core that a student can meet the standard of having been exposed to fractions in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade because they're in the 4th grade, and last year they weren't exposed to fractions yet. But the standard is the standard. So they said, you know what? We've got to lower our expectations because these students, even though this is the standard, assumes you've had 3 years of exposure before you walk into the 4th grade. You haven't. The 2nd year, well, now you've got some students that have been exposed for a year, but they still haven't been exposed for 3 previous years. So the expectation goes up incrementally, but it's still not, you're still not assuming that 100% of your students are going to achieve the standard simply because we've changed the focus and the way that we're educating our students. So I'm hoping this is for the people at home watching this, because I heard those comments and I just wanted it on the record as to why the expectations are built the way that they are, and why it's good that, why we're saying it's great news even though not all of our students are meeting the standard, it's because the standard assumes education's in place that hasn't been in there for that number of consecutive years.
If I could add a point too, is the reason why No Child Left Behind ultimately collapsed under its own pressure was because they stated when they adopted it that in 2014 all students would be proficient and advanced. That was the metric, that every kid, every human being would be advanced and proficient. And so as time passed, it collapsed on itself. But the irony within that is that to be advanced and proficient, there were either 4 categories or 6 categories, whether or not you were being tested in ELA or math. Each one of those categories to be proficient and advanced were never 100%. So a lot of people who are who grew up listening to music in the 1980s, we were all measured on a metric of 100% is the best you can do, and 90% or higher is an A. And so re-educating the adult world who lived in that world, that these measures are much more in depth and much more complicated, and that not being 100% is a failure is just changing people's mindset, and that takes a long time. And so No Child Left Behind had to be replaced because every school district, no matter how high performing, would have been labeled a failure by now because it's 2016. So there's some education to do, and it's important, and I want to compliment Director Sherburne, is it's okay to say our scores are really good, but we have things to fix. And it is important to acknowledge that, and then it's about going out and doing the work.
And if any of my comments made it sound like I was saying that we weren't, or that it wasn't great, I apologize.
No. I wasn't saying that at all.
Okay. The other thing that I wanted to touch on is MAP testing. And the question has come up in the community on why we have as much MAP testing as we do. And do we even, we do it in the end of the year and then we turn around and we do it in the beginning of the year, and that's ridiculous because they haven't learned anything. And so my comment, and I apologize that you're saying, there's some stuff that I want the community to understand, is that in the education that we take as school board members, we learned that learning does occur in the summer. And the reverse occurs in the summer. And so you could have 2 students that have the same exact MAP scores at the end of one year, and one student whose family reads with them and is sort of, they're not couch potatoes watching TV, they actually improve, even though they're not in the classroom, they improve by 10%. Mm-hmm. Whereas another student doesn't have that advantage and goes backward by 15%. So the difference, this teacher, if all they had at their disposal was a MAP test from the end of the previous year, they would say these 2 students are the same. They would have no diagnostic tool to tell them that they need to teach those 2 children differently, but they're actually 25% disparate when they walk into the class. And that it would be a huge disservice to our students if we did not give the teachers that tool until midway through the school year.
Additionally, on that MAP testing in the fall, it is scoring them as their new grade level, which gives different information, and then that assessment information is used to generate a learning pathway that is individualized and tailored to that child. So we don't want to generate a learning pathway that isn't really tailored to that child's actual needs right now, whether they had summer learning loss or summer learning gain. We want to make sure that we're meeting them right where they're at the beginning of the school year in comparison to their new grade level, and they're ready to move forward. To your earlier point about the overall big picture of the assessments, I could point out that to reinforce your point, even though I can tell you that fractions were taught in first grade even before, but a lot of it was about memorize and know and put an answer down, and most of us have all subscribed to the cram the night before and managed to pull off a B or an A when we probably really only deserved a C, and if I had to take the test now, I'd be lucky to pass, kind of thing. And what has really happened is that the testing has gotten a lot smarter to make sure that what we're measuring is real learning, because I really understand it in a variety of ways at a depth that I understand it, and I'm likely to hold that information for a longer period of time because I can explain it and I can apply it. There is really almost no cheating the test anymore. It's about showing demonstration of real knowledge and learning that you are likely to hold on to for the rest of your life, and that is a different kind of learning. And then absolutely, you are still going to have any kind of transition that happens. You're going to have multiple years of gains the longer the students are getting that concept development, or multiple years of gaps to overcome in the transition as you start at older ages. So you're absolutely right.
And because like what you just said, because you can't beat the test anymore, that's where the consternation comes from. That's why students are struggling. That's why the parents are tired of listening to them complain and are furious at the amount of testing we're doing. But we're getting some really good data, and we're able to drive curriculum based on the data.
And getting these results.
And ultimately, we're getting really good instruction for kids as we learn to do this. That's what the big thing is about. We want students who really know how to read and analyze, who really want to be able to be critical thinkers in what they read and determine whether or not that's valid or not valid. And somebody's just, putting bogus information into an article that we should be dismissive. We want them to be real thinkers of that. We want them to understand that math. So this is ultimately, we look at test scores for information, but it's ultimately about real learning for our students, really being college and career ready in life.
There's two pieces to this that I want to piggyback on to kind of, at least for me, put a bow on it for some folks. A lot of folks, and I don't just mean in this community, generally in the country, look at testing as an evaluation process, but they always claim that as an evaluation of the teachers. And from my perspective, that's the least useful element that these things are for. You can't develop a learning program for a student unless you know where they are, where they were, and where you want to get them to. And there's, I'm sorry, only one way to figure that out, and that's to test them. And yes, is it a lot of tests? But in the end, this is how you do it. You take these numbers and figure out, okay, Cameron got this score on this test, but last year got this score. What did he do in the summer? What did he do from fall to spring? And what have we been working on? It's about the efficacy of our programs. And it's particularly important when you have a program that didn't actually exist 2 years ago. Without figuring out what we're doing, where we've been, and what changes we need to continue to make to get there, we're flying blind. And if we don't test the kids to figure out how they're doing, I posit, I ask, give me a better solution. If testing isn't a solution to figure out what we need to teach better, how we can teach better, and not just the teachers, the curriculum, the processes, it's not about evaluating how they do their job, but how it's soaking into our students' heads. If you have a better solution, I'm sure we'd all love to hear it. I can't think of one. You said it. This is the reason we do this. This is the reason we test. It's not to hold it over people's heads. It's not to call someone in for an evaluation and say, your kids suck, you're fired. That's not what this is about. This is about, hey, we've got areas we're doing great in. We've got standards we're beating. I heard everything out of your mouth, including the words, but we're not happy. We like what we're at, but we're not done yet. We've got work to do, and these are the areas we need to do it in. And you can't have that information, that data, without this process. I'm glad to see it. I love the numbers, but I love the fact that you're just looking and saying, no, we're great, but we're not where we want to be yet. The standard, whatever the state standard is, I don't care. You don't care, because you know you want to beat where we were last year, and that's always the goal. Do better next time than we're doing this time, and I appreciate it. I appreciate the information and the hard work of everybody in the district. The numbers are great, and I can't wait to see them next year.
Thank you. It's about students. And I'll just add one more thing to your point in that when we think about it, and some would like to say that we are evaluating teachers with it, really what we're doing is, as you said, evaluating program. And we're evaluating what supports need to go in, what kind of things we need to do, what professional development we can provide, how can we systematically affect program change to serve all students so that we have that achievement. And one of the things that we talk about is we say, well, these tests don't really tell you about Johnny that much. It's just one picture, or maybe it's two pictures of how Johnny is doing. And to that, I tell you, you are absolutely right, because this isn't about Johnny. This is one part of Johnny, and this tells us with Johnny, along with everybody else in the different different subpopulations or the grade level or however we're looking at it, what we need to do programmatically. If I really want to know about Johnny, you are right. Then I have to do the digging down even deeper and the drilling down. And that's where the teachers' classroom assessments and their formative judgments of what is going on with Johnny or Susie in the classroom, that's where it's going to make a difference for impacting the learning. And a lot of people, parents will tell you that. They'll say, my teacher knows best, my teacher knows my kid, my teacher knows what to do. And absolutely, they should be looking at all the rest of that and drilling down in, because then it is about Johnny specifically. When we do this kind of testing, it's not about Johnny specifically. It's not even about teachers specifically. It's about program overall and how do we all work together to create that best program possible systematically for all students.
I'd like to point out this slide especially is a wonderful illustration of exactly what Trustee Clements was talking about, that we're in the second year of testing a curriculum that's in its second or third year, and we don't have that spiraling all the way up that we've had. 62, 64% is not good, but look at the comparison. These results, state and county-wide, and the districts around us, are showing that it takes time. And you also mentioned something earlier about math. Math has always been a universal language, and our English learners did very well in math. Well, they're not doing so well because they have to explain it now, and they don't have the language and they don't have those concepts to be able to express themselves. So while these, again, I agree with what was said. I'm glad to hear us say we have a lot of work to do, but we're doing fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Great job, and please pass on our thanks to your staff.
Yes, thank you very much.
And the teachers and the administrators, great job. Yeah.
Item C, enrollment report.
I'm proud to say the current enrollment is 4,527 students and growing by about 15 or 16 kids a month.
Wow.
I really, if it's at all possible, I would love to see a report from 13 years ago. I'm not kidding.
I was here 10 years ago.
And I have a vague recollection of what the numbers were when Wickland opened.
When I started here 10 years ago, I think it was 850.
Yeah, I would just love to put up a slide that explains that in 13 years we've gone from this to this.
I can tell you what it'll look like.
Yeah,
Yes.
but conceptually, it was not even just the trajectory. I mean, you got to think about it. I think the overall number when we opened Wickland, the total number of students in the entire school district was less than 600. That's my recollection.
I know on the
And to
website
see
I have a
100-fold, not
Right.
100 times, that's only doubling, 100 times, 100-fold increase in population while we continue to try to change, build the work that has to be done to plan and develop all that. It was just, I would love to see that number because 4,500 is mind-boggling to those of us who've lived here for 13 years. Mind-boggling.
Just
I
in
never
the
thought
4 years I've been on the board, it has almost doubled.
Goodness gracious.
Item D, district maintenance and operations report.
I'm reporting for Mr. Legrand. Good evening, board members and Dr. Nicholas. My apologies for missing the meeting tonight. It is my youngest daughter's 13th birthday today.
Not
Excused.
a good reason.
Excused.
Not a good reason.
Here is my brief report. We have a new custodial employee starting tomorrow at Lammersville District Office to fill one of our 3 openings. I expect the other 2 to be starting soon. He met with Indoor Environmental Services and its subcontractors last Wednesday to kick off the Prop 39 work, and the work is expected to start on Monday at Lammersville Elementary. He has met with 2 playground reps for the Lammersville Elementary Playground Project. He has 1 design proposal already and expecting the second one next week. He will work with the Lammersville principal to make the final decision, and I know that we were going to try to pursue a playground grant for the BARC to assist with that cost. He attended the first construction meeting this morning for the Mountain House High School project, and the construction is proceeding nicely. He attended the district safety committee meeting this afternoon. Maintenance and operations has been assigned by the committee the task of preparing a district security camera plan. He is meeting with representatives from our landscape company tomorrow morning to discuss grounds issues at several district sites, And Alvina will be happy to answer any questions. Happy face.
Did she even write that as like, and you get to answer questions?
I also spoke with the landscaping company as well today and spoke to someone higher up in the chain. I guess there were some pump issues on some of the fields that they've resolved, but basically letting them know that they need to contact our staff if they begin to see any issues with the discoloration of the plants and grass and trees and so forth.
Any questions from the board?
No, thank you, Mr. LeGrand.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to action items. Item A, consider approval of the 16-17 inter-district transfer requests. Any staff report?
None.
Move to approve the 2016-2017 inter-district transfer requests.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, consider approval of unaudited actuals for the 15-16 year-end financial statements. Staff report?
This is a closeout process for our budget for the 15-16 year.
Any board discussion?
A couple of comments, not really questions, but I did note on page 170 of the packet the expense positive validation check. We ended up with negative expenses, which is unusual, but they're minor and well explained. So thank you very much. And then the last one is on page 193 of the packet, Fund 49 CFD 07-1 Series 2013. Seeing a negative amount of $1 in accounts receivable and fund balance looks strange. I'm sure it was rounding.
It was rounding, and I will let you know that I was so used to balancing to the penny that when we switched to this new finance system, it drove me crazy because it was rounding. And so all those cents were thrown off. So, yeah.
It does lead to some strange results that you wouldn't typically see. But
yes.
Anyway, I did examine for magnitude. Obviously, I'm not reviewing every number, but all of the things seemed reasonable to me. Thank you so much for all the work that I know it takes to do that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks, Alvina.
I'll move for approval of the unaudited actuals for the 15-16 year-end financial statements.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item C, consider approval of the construction pre-qualification questionnaire and score sheet for the Peter Hansen Elementary School project. Staff report?
This is the same process the board approved for this portion of the high school Phase 4 project. This will lead to the open selection process for the Hansen work.
Any board discussion?
I just had one quick little question. Are the questions basically the same as what we've used in the past?
Yes. And Mr. King is here if anyone has any drill down questions about those questions.
I do have a comment, for the rest of the rest of the board knows it, but for the public. The reason I wanted to kind of expound upon the fact that the responses are confidential and they are not a matter of public record, because in order to identify that your trades pre-qualify, i.e. they have the financial standing and wherewithal to do a good job, that requires that they disclose information that they would rather their competitors not know. So that's not unusual. It's very common being in construction. I don't want my financials out there in the general public, but I know that I have to provide it for the pre-qual process. So nobody's hiding anything. That's just the way it's done in the industry.
Thank you.
I'll move we approve the construction pre-qualification questionnaire score sheet.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item D, consider approval of updated board policy and administrative regulation 1325, advertising and promotion. Staff report?
My understanding is a recommendation is coming out of the Facilities Use Committee about possible advertisements associated with the high school scoreboard.
Trustee Nielsen, you want to expand on that?
Yeah, so it was a couple of things. It had to do with a couple of different options. One related to the scoreboard. In looking at trying to get consistency of the signs at the schools, at the elementary schools as well, it kind of limits the opportunities. And the idea, at least from the committee's perspective, was the uniformity was supposed to be to avoid having, teeny tiny little ones and great big giant ones. And we thought it might be better to set a size standard from a minimum to a maximum size to allow a little bit more creativity and a little bit more option and then specifically at the high school, if we start trying to say, you have to buy a sign this big, it might drive away competition. And it even created a problem with the first folks who wanted to come in and advertise, because we didn't have sizes and everything else, so it really created some problems. So we were hoping, at least from the committee's perspective, that the board would agree to a little bit of flexibility, but not just, the Wild West as far as shapes and sizes and everything else, both at the high school and at the elementary levels, to try to provide a little creativity, but some consistency and structure. I will tell you that the other thing that went out, at least that we asked Alvina to report to staff, was to remind staff that we have rules, that they should be followed, that they're not presently being followed by certain entities, and that if banners don't meet the requirements, both for their care, their condition, and the size minimum and maximums, that they're coming down. That's how it's got to be, and I've already seen that happen, which is great. But for the AR and stuff, it really is just, we're trying to give a little bit more flexibility to allow for some creativity and still maintain some consistency. So, and I'm happy to answer questions about what we talked about if you'd like.
Any board discussion?
Move to approve updated board.
Sorry, I did actually have one thing. And I kind of want to piggyback on some of that is, for the superintendent, this needs to be enforced with your staff. We spent a lot of time creating this policy, and the policy has not been followed ever since we created it. So, I mean, it's great we're giving some flexibility, but it's going to get out of control if it doesn't start getting policed by the sites or whoever does it. But it needs to be enforced.
Mrs. Kaiser and I will have that conversation tomorrow morning.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, now I'm not going to, no. Move to approve updated board policy, administrative regulation 1325, advertising and promotion.
Second.
First and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I changed my mind.
Motion carries. Item E, consider approval of nomination of CSBA Director at Large Hispanic for Catherine Ramirez. So something that I had asked for through my work with CSBA. I've created a working relationship with Catherine. We're both on the Golden Bell Award Committee right now. And she, as a Director at Large, she is responsible, or her constituency are all of the delegates. She has to be nominated by boards. So she has asked that if I would bring it back to our board. If there's any questions about her, she included her resume. So she needs a nomination to go on for her position to continue to be reelected as Director at Large, representing Hispanic.
So this is just for a nomination. At this point, we don't know if anyone's running against her.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just for, each candidate has to be nominated by a board somewhere in the state.
Well, she, based on the package, she has impressive credentials. So I would have to say, move to approve nomination of CSBA Director at Large Hispanic for Catherine Ramirez.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item F, consider approval of contract with an outside agency for licensed vocational nurse services. Staff rehab, $39,975.75. Staff report?
This is just an example of some of the work we have to do with outside folks.
I have a question. These are LVNs, so most of them don't have a bachelor's degree, therefore they don't qualify for pupil personnel services, nursing credential. Who is the oversight? Who has the credential?
I'll have Director Corona answer that question.
So this year, the district did approve a position for a nurse and a registered nurse, and based on ed code, the registered nurse oversees them. So she is in charge of supervising the licensed vocational nurses. Otherwise, we would not be able to hire LVNs.
And you're having that RN apply for the PPS?
Yes, yes. She has a preliminary.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question too, Mrs. Corona, just because we kind of had this discussion at the last meeting. I want to point this out for the folks who might be listening at home. Of this amount, the state pays us exactly how much to hire nurses and LVNs for our special education students? Okay, I just wanted to point that out, that this is once again money coming from money that we have to spend and need to spend because these kids need it.
Absolutely.
That the state
Yes.
says, oh, you should do it. You get to figure out how to do it while also doing all your other programs, and we'll just take the money out of that. So
You are
just
correct.
wanted to point that out.
I'm sorry, the state says you have to do it.
Have to do it,
Yes, okay.
but we don't have to pay for it. And I'll move we approve the contract for outside agency for LVN services with staff rehab.
I'll second.
And this is one of those things where we have to do it, so I don't really have a choice.
Oh, no, we could vote no, two of us.
You can vote no if you wanted a different agency.
First and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item G, consider approval of one-year extension for district intern education specialist credential Anthony Irizarry. Thank you. Mountain House High School. Staff report.
This was the recommendation from our HR department to approve this person for this additional year.
Any board discussion?
So this is a second-year intern?
Have Mr. Miller come up and address that.
I wasn't able to figure that out from the documents.
Good evening. No, this is a out-of-state individual who has a credential that we're just going through the preliminary process to make sure that we credential him properly.
Mm-hmm. It's very difficult to come into California from another state and think you have a credential right away.
Correct.
Been there, done that. I get it. Thank you.
What, then your credential didn't
Thank
carry
you, Mr.
over? Thank you.
Move to approve one-year extension for district intern education specialist credential Anthony Irizarry at Mountain House High School.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Information discussion items. Item A, science fair update.
So for the last 3 years plus, we've been trying to resolve an inconsistency of practice with our science fair project that started at one school with great intentions, and as the district grew, it got passed on and on and on. But the meaning and purpose and function of how we were conducting that effort lost focus and specificity, and in some cases, standards. So after beginning this journey with the excellent work of Dr. Gill and moving it through to a team, Director Sherburne is going to give a presentation of the district standard, which is going to go out to school sites and be communicated to families about what the standard for this particular project is in our district.
Good evening again. So I will start by noting that on this slide it says LUSD project. It's the science project. And we're making a little bit of a shift this year from everything about the science project that has happened in the past being about the science fair project. We do really value science. It's a very important part of our students' education, but we want to make sure that we're doing this with the best of intentions. So an overview of why we would want to do a science project there is because we really want to create that love of science. We want to support student learning towards those 21st century college and careers, and we know that science is a huge area of need in industry for future careers. We want to make sure that students have the knowledge they need to apply that science knowledge into their real lives by making real life connections to different aspects that they would go into, whether that's agriculture or it's chemistry or biology, animal sciences. Science impacts so many parts of our lives. And we really want to develop that analytical and critical thinking skills that go along with being involved in science. That's where I always say it gives a reason and a purpose for reading and doing math and learning all of those things, because we can really dig into these interesting concepts that are in history or in sciences. And we want to build a foundation for the 7th through 12th grade science that students are going to be taking when they really are beginning to embark on what they're going to do with their college and careers out there in the world. So the science fair, is the science fair participation going to be required? Absolutely not. It is not going to be required as an LUSD district standard. Can students participate in the science fair? Do we want them to participate in the science fair? Absolutely they can, and absolutely we hope that many, many students will choose to do that because they have a real passion for doing the science fair. Each school site will have somebody who continues to coordinate for students who wish to participate in the science fair, but it's not going to be a requirement. Schools and teachers are going to have options that they can choose from in terms of doing a science project that's not necessarily science fair specific. So what are those requirements? The requirements are that the teachers are teaching students about the scientific method, that they really understand that scientific method process. They're going to be doing a project at the K through 2 grades in their class. Then the 3rd through 6th grades will do small group or individual projects and participate from there on out. All grade levels will have it taught within their class, though. That is a big requirement, is that there's instruction within class. That they'll need to also make this project a little bit more well-rounded, and that's part of the shift with Next Gen Science standards. But if you look at our English language arts standards, there's a whole lot of standards that are around research and inquiry and writing around that. So why wouldn't we make full use of this science project to be integrating in a really meaningful way all of those English language arts standards that go along with this science project? So we're expecting that teachers follow through with the science research part of it and the writing and inquiry aspects of it. Presentation aspects. So the implementation expectations that we have expressed and designed, that teachers will need to develop a letter that they will send home to parents by September 30th. They may send it earlier than that, but by September 30th at a minimum, explaining the timeline within their class, what their project is going to look like, and any of the other information and details that parents need to know so they know what is going on. We also expect that they've integrated those English language arts standards into their project overall, that they have a project that's taught to the whole class that is modeling the scientific method, because it's important that we're teaching this. We're not assigning it. It's not a homework project. It's part of our curriculum and our instruction. And then that student project that they do either in small groups or individually is actually allocated time within class for students to be working on those projects and receiving feedback from the teachers as part of the instruction for completing that project, just as it would be for any other project out there. And then that there'll be some sort of presentation of those projects. Now, those projects could look different. Some might do Google Slides, some might do heck, they could figure out how to do a poetry slam and still model their whole process if they wanted to be creative about the whole thing. Some might choose to do the official science fair project presentation boards and do all of that. Some of that might want to give a model of their science project and walk people through the steps. The idea being that they're demonstrating their understanding of that scientific method, and they're also demonstrating their skills and abilities with writing, with research, and with oral communication presentation skills. So this is a minimum timeline table that we gave as a model for them. The teachers will go through this, and there's a whole lot more specificity behind it in what they need to do. But the teachers are going to need to develop their specific timeline so that they show when they're sending home their parent communication, when they're teaching the scientific method in class. And it's week by week over a 16-week period, culminating with that presentation in class. This timeline aligns to when science fair projects for those students who are participating in the science fair, for when theirs would be done. So all of that is aligned to meet the needs for those students who do want to participate in the science fair. And then we've put a guide together that has a whole lot of different resources in it. These are snippets of some of the resources. And if I could get Noelle to click on the hyperlink at the bottom where it says LUSD Scientific Method Guide. This will open up to the document that we've given them. And if you scroll down and that's what I look like. Wanted to make it have a little bit of fun, but I'll have you scroll down. It outlines all of the information for the teacher so that they can see the requirements here in narrative form. The red colored font is the science fair specific information. The other school site projects and celebrations, parent nights, those kinds of things. If they want to have assemblies that they have at their discretion, sites will customize that to meet their site's needs. All of the information about the scientific method is in there to provide support. Keep going, keep going. So it models them all the way through that process. Then this is where I have that timeline spelled out in much more detail, explaining to the teachers exactly what the expectation is for that aspect of the timeline. I'll have you scroll quite a bit more. Go back. Right there, this is where we have hyperlink to a lot of different resources there. Noel, maybe you could click on that first hyperlink, the elementary school video, and you can see this is how to teach the scientific method, and it'll bring up the web page, which isn't working right now, even though it just worked on my tablet.
Just to clarify though, those hyperlinks are not intended for parent use, correct? Those are for...
These are for teachers as resources to be teaching in the classroom. However, there are some things there that a teacher might share with students or parents to look at. There's one in there, Science Buddies, where students and teachers can look together and parents could be working on it, looking at, what do I want to pick for my science project? What kind of topics are out there? What are some things to do? So this is a link to an elementary appropriate video that they could click on that's going to go walk them through that process. So these are different resources. If you want to close out of that one and go back to the main document. If you look at the bottom one, there's a scientific method rubric there, and this is just the science method portion of it. So we've given them a model rubric that they could be using to analyze the students' expectations and abilities just for the science portion of it. If you can close out of that. We've also explained that we would like teachers to make sure that they have rubrics for the presentation portion, rubrics for the writing portion, to make sure that they are clearly explaining what needs to happen to the students and what the expectations are. There's a model airplane science project that the teachers could use as one example of a project that they could teach to the class to model that scientific method. So there are a lot of resources there. Here are the links to the next generation science standards so that they can link right into that. And I will note that in the next generation science standards, the link to the science fair type project or science projects is really falling underneath the engineering and design model. And in talking with the county science curriculum leaders, they're sharing with me that it will not only be scientific method that will be important, but also making sure that we understand that engineering production side of it projects, and those are going to be equally weighted and balanced. So I imagine that we're going to want to look at making some adjustments as we bring on next gen science standards and we make that transition. But here we have it as a resource for them to look at already. If you can scroll just a little bit more, you can see that here we've also outlined what are the current science areas for each grade level so that teachers and students could pick things that go along with the grade level science content areas. Down farther, we have all of the English language arts related Common Core anchor standards for writing and also for communication and presentation. So they are hyperlinked in the blue, but it also has the snippet right there for them so they don't have to go to hyperlinks if they want. And again, this is a resource guide for the teachers to aid them in preparing and planning for their instruction within the classroom. And that's the end of my presentation.
So I'd just like a time mark at 1 hour and 42 minutes into this video for when we hear that the teacher sent home the video to teach the students that that's not the plan, that is not the instruction, that is not the goal, that this is for the teachers to be utilizing and this is supposed to be taught in class, because come January, February, when this stuff is being done, we're going to hear that the school district is doing. No, nor did we do it last year. It hasn't been a mandatory project. It is not supposed to have been done at home a majority of the time. This is not some major shift in the district. This has been what we've been trying to implement for a while now. And that it hasn't been implemented is frustrating, but it's frustrating that it hasn't been implemented. I'm glad that we're providing additional resources to teachers so that they can have the information. And I really would like slide number 2 or 3 where it says this is not mandatory blown up and put on a banner in front of every school.
So I think this resource for teachers is going to make it much easier for the teachers to be able to teach all of this. I love the integration of the standards and that you have it all there in one place for the teachers to be able to link all of that together because it is linked. So, and again, I'm going to reiterate, teachers are teaching and administration is monitoring that the project is not done 100% at home, but there might be some homework linked to it. Nobody ever said there's no homework. Okay, there might be some homework linked to it, but the homework supports and informs the work that's being done in the classroom.
So that 45-minute per week requirement goes all the way through. Weeks 2 through 6 are the weeks that are allocated to teaching the scientific method, whole class in there, and then the facilitation of the project in class every week thereafter.
I do have one question about the letter. Are we creating that at a site level, at a grade level, or is each teacher creating their own letter?
Each teacher is creating their own letter, but it is to specify exactly how they're rolling out the timeline that is there. So the timeline serves as a template for them. What they're doing is they're detailing what that will look like in their class.
And the principal will get a copy of that letter.
That is a part of the expectation, is that
That's kind of what I was
the
thinking,
teacher
like
has
a
to
grade
give the letter to the principal and have it reviewed, and then the letter will be
And
going
grade
home.
levels, if they want to, can get together and do it.
Sure,
as-
absolutely.
So just to add, the principals have already seen this. We've gone over it in admin forum. The expectations have been explained and discussed. There's communication expectations to different audiences of parents, and so we're cleaning up what was a well-intended project years ago that became a false standard. And the false standard is that in too many cases, a good project was being passed on to parents with no direction and no direct teaching. That was never the intention. We understand that we're going to put this out, and some people will need some help following the direction. But what we want to say is that if a parent feels like the project's been passed on to them with no direction and no support, that they are welcome to call the teacher, the school site, the district, and find out what this is. This will be posted on the website. But the idea is nobody wants to support a false standard. And we tried to clean this up once. It's a focus area because of the shifts that we're having, but it's a perfect example of being able to systematize something where principals monitor and are clear on the expectations. Teachers are clear and have the resources at their fingertips. It comes down to planning and communication now.
And I'm not at all trying to make excuses. We've been wanting to do this for a long time, but when you go back and you look at our enrollment report and you see how rapidly we've grown with the lack of staff to support this, it's been hard. But I'm glad that we're here, so thank you for the work on this.
Thank you very much.
And I just wanted to add, I'm really excited to see this, and I wanted to point out to the community that this is just one piece of evidence that the district does truly listen to what the community has to say and the community's concerns.
Thank you.
For your comments.
I have some questions I want to make sure I understand. So it sounds to me like we're saying that a child, if they and their parents choose to do so, can actually get all the way through from K through 12 without doing a trifold board for the county.
I would say that is accurate.
Okay.
But they can't get through without being taught repeated over the years scientific method.
Right. But you know, I can tell you that the most frustrating thing in my family about the science fair was the darn trifold board.
Now, there still will be a presentation component,
and
it just isn't necessarily the science fair trifle.
That meets the ELD requirement. You know, like that we get double duty. Yes, you're learning the scientific method, but you're also, you know, presentation skills, English language, all of that. Sure. If you're going to do the work and you can get, you know, double or triple duty, you might as well do it. I just wanted to make sure. So, but in every year, they will either be doing, like in the second up to second grade, they're doing class projects. But a child that's in the second grade that wants to do an individual project, if they choose to do so, they can.
Sure.
Okay. And let's see, because I know I'm going to get asked questions about this, so I want to make sure I understand. I think that's it. Thank you.
And I would just say, I think Dr. Nicholas explained a very good way that I will be answering those questions. Have you talked to your teacher? No. Oh, okay, try that. Did you talk to your teacher? Yes. Did you talk to your principal? No? Oh, yes? Okay. Then did you call the district? Because we're really not supposed to be in this minutia as board members. This is a process of teacher, principal, district office, and then when nothing happens, you come to the board and get it then.
Wouldn't
That's
that be
how
nice,
this works. Just saying. So I'm hopeful that this will provide it, that getting on the website will get the information out to the public. And again, very glad to see it. So thank you.
I don't
Thank
have any question. I would just like to thank Director Sherburne and staff for what is quite apparently a lot of work and thought that went into this presentation and the delineation of what is going to be expected of teachers and students and so on. And it's impressive. Thank you.
Yes, by all means, thank you very much. I'm sorry.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Item B, research on homework.
This is a perfect pivot. One of the things I got to tell you is watching Dr. Gill's enthusiasm for this topic. She's been beaming for about a week and a half now, because it goes back to this topic of a false standard. And the homework expectations when we went to school and what homework is, the research says about the purpose and function of homework today, it's gotten better, the expectations, and the research is very clear. So Dr. Gill is going to give an introductory presentation tonight with one of our best teachers in the district, Tammy Hurst. And but it's one of a multiple part series of Dr. Gill's research on the homework information. And I want to forewarn everyone that she's going to build her next presentation using the scientific method to fulfill her inspiration. So that's my introduction.
Thank you, Dr. Nicholas. Good evening, Governing Board, Mr. President, and Dr. Nicholas. So he is 100% correct that whatever we preach, we practice. So I will be using the scientific method, going through the same process that we ask the kids to go through, which is making an observation, looking at a problem statement, researching, developing a hypothesis, and going through the rest of the steps. So I do have the pleasure of...
The trifold board.
I want the trifold board. I want the trifold board.
I'm with Mr.
I'm going to judge it based on the rubric, too.
I'm with Mr. Clements on that. I'm going to take a pass on the trifold board. So I do have the pleasure of having Mrs. Tammy Hurst with me, third grade teacher at Altima School, who has been doing some work with her class, and so she's going to share her experience as well. So this question on homework, along with science fair, is a perfect example. What kind of homework, how much homework, amount of homework? I mean, there's all sorts of questions. So what we are going to do in this presentation, as Dr. Nicholas said, I have so much information, I really wanted to share every single thing today. And so he said, no, Kush, not today. So he had to stop me from that. So I said, okay, I'll just share maybe 20% of it, and that's it. So what we're going to do today is just look at what we actually have, what our policies, practices are. Look at a little bit of the research. Ms. Hurst will share some of her experiences as a teacher, and then we'll talk about next steps and the hypotheses. So I'm going to start with what we actually have right now. So CDE has no specific guidelines. We call them, we check their website. I mean, I did all sorts of things with CDE. There's really no specific guidelines on homework from CDE. And they do have a good reason. They said it is such a controversial topic. There is no black and white research on it. So they do not provide specific requirements or guidelines on purpose. In our district, we don't have an adopted board policy. However, the sample that we have from CSBA is also from 1999. There is nothing since then from CSBA either. We do have the AR adopted 6154, which is tied to the CSBA sample board policy. In a nutshell, I'm just going to share a snippet from it, basically a summary of it, that AR, one piece of it, which says that the principal and the staff at each of the school site should develop and regularly review a site-level homework plan. And the plan should include things like what kind of homework should be assigned, the amount of homework that should be assigned, and what kind of responsibilities the parents should have, the staff should have, the students should have, what kind of role each of those stakeholders should play in that homework. And they should also identify amount of time, parent participation, expectations from the students, from the teachers, from, again, different stakeholders. It also talks about specific grade levels, like at different grade levels, amount of homework, time of homework, those type of things. And ultimately, it says one sentence very clearly, that the most important thing about homework, the focus of homework should be the best way to help students. Whatever is the best way to help students, that should be aligned, and that's how homework should be given. So that's what the AR says, based on the board policy that was adopted by came from CSB in 1999. Our district adopted the AR in 2008. So in our district, general expectation, after talking to the curriculum team, is that our current K-8 math units, we expect that teachers should only assign homework once the problem set is completed. And also once most of the students, approximately 80% of the students, know how to solve the problems. If the problems are not completed, if most of our students haven't mastered it, it should not be assigned as homework, because we are not really setting them up for success then. We're setting them up for failure. They would not be able to complete their homework, especially Common Core type of homework where the kids have to explain how to do this, what to do, how to apply, all those type of pieces. In ELA, specifically our curriculum, the current curriculum, does not require homework, doesn't say specifically this is for homework. It is at teacher's discretion to use any part from the actual curriculum if they would like to assign for homework. And again, the purpose is very, very clearly defined, that the purpose of homework should be just to practice skills they have learned inside the classroom. In the other areas, other subject areas, as of right now, there is really no specific guidelines in the curriculum piece I'm talking about from the curriculum point of view for homework. It is all at teacher discretion. So there is a little bit of the research I'm going to share with you. There is so much research on homework, 65 years worth plus research, all sorts of research. So I'm just going to share just a quick snippets about what kind of sports from a positive advantage point of view, that research does show that there is a clear relationship, there's a clear correlation between the homework and achievement outcomes. That has gone through quite a bit of research, and that kind of relationship is there. But I'm going to talk about what kind of homework, how much homework later on in the presentation. It also shows that in our country, students spend quite a bit less time studying academic content areas as compared to other countries such as Japan, Germany, France, and other leading countries that are much more advanced educationally as compared to our country. I even remember personally, we used to have school from 7:30 in the morning until 4:30 in the afternoon, and Saturdays our school was from 7:30 in the morning until 1:30. So we went to school 6 days a week. And that is a very common practice in many other countries, that kids do have school, either longer hours, 5 days a week, or school six days a week. And also, these studies are very clear, and I am just showing you specific research from 1994, but there has been more research recent that was much elaborated, also show that some of the countries actually spend twice the time studying content as compared to what the research says internationally in our country. That is just a broad international level research, just giving just an idea. And then there are some concerns regarding homework as well. One of the areas where the homework does get criticized is the quantity of the homework and the quality of the homework. Is how much time are we asking the kids to spend on the homework? How much amount of homework are we giving? Are we giving do problems 1 through 50 on math, and what is the point of doing all those 50 problems? And then also the quality of homework. Okay, so quality of homework is very, very important. Does it relate to what the kids are learning in class, or is it just a packet of information that kids have to complete and they really have no meaning? They can't really apply those skills next day in the classroom, so that type of piece. It also talks about from longitudinal point of view. One of the studies did talk about that longitudinally, too much homework does impact students' health, because they're sitting down in school all day long, then they're sitting down for hours at home, not really taking care of themselves, worrying about homework, and not getting physically active. There are all sorts of pieces. And family time. Because families work, parents work, even in our community. So if the parents are coming home 6, 7 o'clock in the evening time, then they're having to spend 2 or 3 hours of time with their kids on homework. Between dinner and homework, there is really no time. That's all they get to do. And then also research talks about, again, I mentioned this earlier, that we should reduce the amount of homework, but make it really valuable. Whatever is being given to the students, really make it valuable. There was no research that said, don't give homework. All of the research that I went through said, assign homework that is reasonable, valuable, beneficial to the students. And this piece, real quickly, it did say that any homework that is burdensome, avoid that giving over breaks and over holidays. Just give things like, practice your basic reading skills, practice your basic writing skills at your own leisure, where the kids actually enjoy doing it, they want to do it, but not necessarily you have to finish these many pages, because then it becomes about finishing pages as compared to really enjoying it, learning from it, and on all that kind of stuff. This comes up over and over and over, which is too much homework impacts negatively all students, but especially economically disadvantaged kids. And if we really look at any kind of data, even our student data, if you look at our student data, students who are low performing, students who are low socioeconomic status, they do perform lower as compared to the other students. Two of the reasons are, one is that they don't have the kind of resources that the other students might have had. Secondly, some of the students who are in the economically disadvantaged subgroups might be the students whose parents are not educated, whose parents are not able to provide the content and knowledge at home to support with that kind of homework. Sometimes the kind of homework that's being assigned is so difficult that the kids just neither have the resources nor have that help at home. And again, it does talk about specifically, it did say, teachers, please assign homework that is meaningful, that is beneficial to the students. And then in the upper grades specifically, it talks about involving students in homework decisions, asking them what kind of homework, how much homework, because if it's a community decision as a whole class, they may take more ownership. And saying, we made this decision, we came to this consensus, let's teamwork together. The kids might even put peer pressure on each other, and let's say, I'll help you, I'll support you, let's work together on it. It wouldn't be individualized, each student thinking about it by themselves. So these were quite a few studies that I just put in one slide just to share that information with you. There is a lot more information on this also, but I'm only going to share with you just one piece of it, which is amount of time that is being spent on homework. This topic is very controversial because amount of time is qualitative based on who are you talking about, because one child, it may take them 10 minutes to do an assignment, same thing. Another child may take half an hour, another child may take 2 hours. So it is very individualized. That's why it is very controversial. But again, this researcher Cooper has done so much research on homework. It's like crazy, like so many studies out there from him. And there is a such thing which is called 10-minute rule, that you apply the 10-minute rule and multiply that by the child's grade level. So kindergarten, K is 0, 0 times 10 is 0. So kindergarten ideally, according to this rule, should have no homework. And first grade, 10 times 1 is 10, should have 10 minutes homework worth of homework daily basis. Second grade, 10 times 2 is 20 minutes worth of homework, and so on. And then it also talks about that if teachers are assigning reading as homework, then that 10-minute rule could be changed to 15 minutes. And then still, at second grade level, it should be 30 minutes, including reading. And then there are other studies that talks about realistically, again, from fourth grade up, that 5 to 10 minutes per subject. Again, the level of difficulty and the length should be realistic. It really research does go back to don't assign homework if the kids haven't mastered it in class, or majority of the kids haven't mastered. And then the third bullet point there talks about the high school students may actually have 30 to 60 minutes of homework. You're talking about college-bound high school students, kids who are taking IB, AP kind of classes. They can have approximately that much. So again, there are a couple other studies again about junior high and high school students having approximately 1 to 2 or 2.5 hours of homework on a nightly basis. But it does talk about that if it's too much, if it's beyond that, it's really no good. It's actually has negative impact. It's a negative correlation for statistically on the students, and it doesn't really help them at all. So we have to be very, very mindful of that and saying when we do assign homework. Overall, just a very quick summary. Again, there is positive effects of homework. But I do want to point out one thing, that's what research says very clearly. Positive impacts of homework only count based on the amount of homework the children did, the amount of homework they completed, not how much homework was assigned, and not how much time it took them to take. It is what were they able to complete. That's what we have to measure, because they were measuring it by using different variables, and that was the only variable that was solid, which was the amount of homework they actually completed, not how much homework was actually assigned. And again, the high recommendation is teachers need to plan carefully and assign homework to maximize student success. So we should be looking at, when we are assigning homework, can 80 or 90 or 100%, even if it's not 100% or 80% of my students do the work? Are they actually doing the work? If they're not doing the work, then we really need to rethink that. And again, I mentioned this already, but I just want to stress that again, that too much homework does diminish the effectiveness even for high school grade levels. And Ms. Hurst is going to talk about her experience as a teacher, and then I'll come back to wrap it up.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I just want to say that this is just an example from my classroom. I'm not speaking for the rest of the teaching staff. This is just what I do, and it's working for me. And so I'll introduce myself to you. I am Tammy Hurst. I am a third grade teacher at Altamont Elementary, which, by the way, did very well on their CASP testing. I would also like to say that I do teach the science project exactly the way that it's laid out already, and that the years past have been very successful. Either my class projects or my individual projects go to the county every year. So I'm pleased with the format, and not all teachers just send the project home. I am an LUSD teacher since 2004, and I subbed in the district prior to that, so I do have a lot of experience with the community in regards to setting homework standards. I also am a Mountain House resident and a successful parent of a student who is a product of Mountain House and now attends UC Berkeley. She graduated from Tracy High School with her IB diploma and her performing arts diploma, her bilingual certificate. She's very accomplished in a lot of extracurricular activities besides her academics. And she had a lot of homework. She's also ADD, medicated, and shows success from her learning challenges as well. I'm currently working on my Master's of Education in Administration, and so I've been doing a lot of research on a variety of things regarding academics, and homework being one of them. So I think through the presentation, we have demonstrated that there is an importance to homework. And in my design for homework, it's all about practice, preparation, extension of classroom learning, to challenge our students, and the integration of our grade level skills and concepts. As an educator, I believe it is important to provide meaningful opportunities for my students to develop their skills with purpose. I assign homework nightly. I don't give packets, and that's because I'm constantly throughout the day adjusting what I would particularly give to homework based on students' needs, based at where we're at in the curriculum and the concepts I'm teaching. I assign it nightly so I can check it in daily, and I can make adjustments where needed, or I can set up small groups for reteaching and that sort of thing, so it keeps me going with my daily assessments. It's designed around students' individual needs and the concepts that were previously taught. It's very flexible this way, and this is how I prefer it to be. Meaning that the only regularity that I have to my homework policy is the reading log that is mandatory, and it's assigned each night. Examples of homework that I may assign. This list here is just examples of what I grab from. It's not something that I assign every single night. So I may pick 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 items from the list. So I have reading for 30 minutes. I include a spelling activity, a grammar activity, or a dictionary work activity, and it's all surrounding those phonics skills that we correlate with the spelling words. Writing is assigned, cursive is assigned. Writing, you know, you have to do it in order to improve on it. So that is definitely part of my homework policy. Artistic touches to a project. So when I assign projects, we'll do the meat of the work in the class, and then I'll send the rest home to be developed and published into a project. And Mr. Clements, his children are a product of those projects as well.
Yes, they are.
And I think they still have them. Math lessons are previously taught, and math facts practice. Compass learning activities and any kind of technology-driven activities that I can send home to enrich their learning is also added to the homework, but most of the time that's put in an optional status because not all of my students will have access to technology. I think what is key to the success of my homework policy is the communication I have with my parents. I state at back to school night that we are partners, and I tell my parents that I'm working with that we need to communicate about the homework. They know their children better than I do off the get-go, and they can tell me when it's taking them too long to do the homework that I assigned. And I give them the special message. Please write a note on the homework, send me an email. My child worked on this for 45 minutes, and this is how far they got. Because like Dr. Gill said, it's about the content of the assignment and what they get done, not how much that they do. By having that communication, I'm able to make adjustments. I'm able to differentiate more, and by having that communication, I get to know the community that I'm working with and learn how I can manage my homework better. So I feel like if I inform them that the homework is meant to provide life skills, so my homework is not graded in my class. I do not put a rubric score on it. I do not put it in the grade book except under life skills, because I believe that homework is about building responsibility and accountability besides mastering, helping master those skills. So that's what I focus more on as far as the homework. When I collect it, it's more about the citizenship grade than it is about academics. I also feel that it's important to understand that the needs of the community and know the families I'm working with. So as a parent and a successful student that I have within this district, I understand where the parents are coming from with their busy schedules and extracurricular activities, and I'm more than happy to work with the families around that to make sure that the kids are happy. Okay? That's it. Any questions?
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
How many minutes average would you say you assign your students?
When I first was hired with the district and I looked up district policy, they had a certain amount of minutes per grade level. And when I taught second grade, it was at 30 minutes and second grade at 45 minutes. So I try to keep it right around that range. I do ask my parents to let me know if what I'm giving is over that amount of time so I can scale it back and make adjustments. So I keep it right around that 45-minute mark. If you ask most of my students, they get it done sooner than that.
Would that be 30 minutes of reading and then an additional 15 minutes of?
No, I tell them that to get in the 30 minutes solid of reading first, since that's my major focus for that grade level, and then the 15 minutes that are leftovers for the academics. Most of the things I can give them, they can get the concept done in about 5, maybe 10 minutes max.
So it would be a total of 45 minutes,
Correct.
including reading.
Correct.
Do you give all the students in your class the same homework assignment, or is it adjusted according to student needs?
It's adjusted to student needs. The majority of the kids are right around the same range, so for the most part, that they get the same, but then there's those few that I have to make adjustments for.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hurst. That was awesome. So just a couple more slides before I wrap it up. So our next steps after looking at this research is we would like to move forward with the blessing from the board and Dr. Nicholas is look into developing a board policy and then at the same time have our administrative regulation aligned with that, but which also is driven by our curriculum and driven by the district direction, because that's where everything has to come together. Our goal will be to share the administrative regulations and this research, specifically this presentation, with our site admin and then our PLC team, which is comprised of teachers, K-12, and then site administrators. And then also share this with the stakeholders at the site levels, like foundations and school site councils and PAC meet teams and all the different types of stakeholders at the site levels, and get everybody's input, get their feedback, and then bring back to the board the result of the work and recommendations on the new AR and the new board policy in the spring of 2017. So I would like to I typically don't read PowerPoints, but I'm going to read this statement because we worked very hard, and this was fun to write this. So because in scientific method, after you are wondering about a topic, wondering about a question, you do research, and then you develop a hypothesis. So this is our hypothesis, that in LUSD, in Lammersville Unified School District, homework guidelines are aligned. Sorry, let me take it back. Let me just start again. The word was if, not in. I got too excited. So if LUSD homework guidelines are aligned with research-based practices and implemented effectively, then the guidelines will provide critical thinking opportunities and homework will become a meaningful learning experience for our students. That's our hypotheses based on our observations and our research. And the rest of the work to follow through the rest of the scientific method steps that will come later on. Questions, direction?
I want to add one thing real quick. As someone who's experienced, not personally, unfortunately, but experienced the positive feedback of Ms. Hurst's teaching methods, that's teaching. Mm-hmm. And as much as I agree with you, some parts of teaching is stressful, that's teaching. Teaching isn't, I got my packet for today and I've set up my packets for the next 10 weeks and I just hand them out and we're done. That's not teaching.
That's not teaching.
Developing, implementing, and changing it on the ground as you're doing it nightly, daily, weekly, that's teaching. I commend you for the hard work that I know that you're not that no one sees, but I appreciate, and the parents who have had you greatly appreciate, because that is.
Don't speak for me.
That's
No, I'm just-
teaching. I've had many parents talk to me about teachers. It's rare to get parents to come to you to talk to you about anything that's not negative. You've been an exception in the past, and I've never been able to share that because it's always been confidential. But I'm allowed to in this circumstance because I believe, first of all, I'm not sharing names, but I believe that it's important to recognize you're doing what I think we should be doing. And while I won't be here to see the end result of this, I'm hoping we're going to follow a lot of what your lead is, because it's fantastic, and I thank you very much.
So one of the things you started with, Dr. Gill, is the best way to support students. That's what we need to focus on with homework. And for the most part, not all teachers, we have some teachers who may just want to assign packets and 600 problems in one night. Of course, I'm exaggerating. I hope I'm exaggerating. But who is the expert to determine the best way to support our students? And that's our talented teachers.
Yes, I agree, 100%.
I love this hypothesis. This is the basis of our district guidelines. It always frustrated me when I was a classroom teacher that I was told, give X number of minutes of homework. Well, as you both said, every child is different. Some kid's going to take 5 minutes on this, another kid's going to take an hour.
Correct.
So it's not about minutes, it's about the meaningful work for the students. Way back in the Ice Age, when I taught my students who were struggling, I told them, you just do the odd numbers. It's okay. Everybody's going to do 1 through 20. You just do the odd numbers, because I know it's going to take you a little bit longer, but I know you can do it. And that was the way we accommodated way back then. Times have changed. Have our teachers been reminded of the general expectations that you showed in the beginning of the PowerPoint?
That is the work we will be doing through our PLC team, and then taking it to the site levels. This is the beginning of a journey that is going to come ahead of us. Yes.
And as Mrs. Hurst said, and every parent should be hearing this, if the homework is burdensome, and these are not your exact words, talk to the teacher.
That's correct.
And if there's a problem and the teachers, you're not communicating well, talk to the principal. I'm going back to what another trustee said earlier tonight. And if there's still frustrations, there are steps.
Correct.
Okay? There's the teacher, there's the principal, there's the district office. We want to hear from our parents. We want to support our students. And again, as we develop our guidelines, to caution on the times on that, because it doesn't work, as we've heard.
We don't see that.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Great presentation. Thank you so much.
Definitely, thank you.
Trustee Lampel stole a little of my thunder, but I was going to comment that I liked that the word guidelines is in there, not set in stone, not because our teachers know their students, our parents know their children, and there has to be some flexibility, some ability for the teacher to say, you know what, my class is having a lot of difficulty with math right now. We're going to do something different. We're going to give them, a little extra. Or the kids are really picking this up quick. We don't need to do any homework tonight. And that flexibility, I think, is very important to give to the teachers and to the parents, so that it doesn't seem like, oh my goodness, I need to
assign homework.
I need to assign 45 minutes of homework. What am I going, oh, here's a packet, do this.
Correct.
And that's not, I don't think, beneficial for anyone.
I agree 100%. It has to be authentic. It has to be based on the need, as compared to based on, oh, we have to do this.
I wanted to thank you both, and yes, I can actually attest to the effectiveness of Tammy Hurst's educational and teaching style and the homework. I loved having her as a teacher for my children. I thought I think it's a great presentation, but I do have a request. A couple of things. I'm a little disappointed that a parent who is very vocal isn't, it's on the agenda that we're going to speak tonight, about it, and this is the night to come, so that, because when people come and they speak and it's not on the agenda, I get to sit here and look, well, not pretty. I get to sit here and look ugly, you know, like I don't get to say anything, right? This is the time that we can actually have a dialogue because it's on the agenda. And, you know, but you made the comment that there aren't any studies that, you know, say that homework has no benefit. And yet we had a parent come and speak and give us a copy of an article, and it actually had, I'm not going to say it had a study because I'm a debater, and I can put, you know, I can say, you know, Barnes and Finkelschmidt in 2010, and there was actually an article in 2010 by Barnes and Finkelschmidt, but it wasn't a study, but it looks like a study when I put it in an article.
Correct.
Let's face it, I was a debater. I was a nationally ranked debater, so I know how to do stuff like that. But, you know, when the parents say there's this study that shows, I would at least like you to look at, you know, Barnes and Finkelschmidt or whatever it is and see, was that really a study? Was it rehashing a study from the 1800s, you know, like, because they do that as well, right? But I would like, you know, I don't believe that we can go away from something. We can't just say no homework as a district. We have to go towards a plan that will foster student learning and achievement. And saying homework is bad, we're not going to do homework is not towards something, it's away from something. And being a parent and having, you know, one son that could skate through life and not really, you know, could spend the 15 minutes, and having another son that, you know what, in order to get the grades, he had to come home and he had to spend probably twice as much time. I know that, and if he hadn't have, he wouldn't have done nearly as well. He wouldn't have learned nearly as much, and he also wouldn't have learned perseverance. That, you know, sometimes you got to do what you got to do to get the results you want. And so, you know, I like everything that you said. I would like to see, to hear, was that not a study? If it was a study, what, you know, why is, you know, like, because it sounded to me like there was a study that said there's no benefit to homework of some sort, and I would like to know, you know, okay, what did that mean?
The studies, I mean, as Dr. Nicholas said, have done tons of research on this. The studies do show, they even go into correlations and significance of homework, grade by grade by grade by. Studies do show a huge correlation between student achievement as the grade levels goes up. In the younger grades, it talks about, but especially really younger grades, there is correlation, but not as strong of a correlation. But it does say this, that in the younger grade levels, Cooper's study actually talks about that. In the younger grade levels, if we do not develop that habit of the students, actually don't give them that habit, even 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day of getting into this routine, you can't all of a sudden start fourth grade saying, oh, now you have homework, or third grade saying you have homework. It is very difficult from human nature point perspective to develop into that habit and develop that positive attitude towards homework. So
I think what I heard Trustee Clement say, which will give you even more research to do, is I think what he's saying is when someone brings a contrarian point of view, that if they reference a expert or a research article, that we look at it and see if it's an opinion-based editorial, or if it is a research study by a whatever, you know, institution. Because then
they have a trifold board.
Or
we'll definitely do that.
This is something that the public cares very deeply about, and I got to tell you, having a son that if he hadn't have done the homework, right? I mean, his grades now, because he's a junior, and I'm not gonna sit there and make him, right? He's basically a man, in my opinion. It's like you want to get C's, you know. I've seen what his life is like when he focuses, and he doesn't do, you know, he didn't do 8 hours of homework a night or anything like that. But you know, so I agree with everything that you said based on my worldview and my experience. But Dr. Nicholas is right. You know, people, it's very serious to them, and when they bring an article that ostensibly quotes a study, saying there is no benefit, I would like us to be responsive to that. And it could be, you know what, it wasn't a study. It was an article by a PhD, a child psychologist, and he said, you know, or maybe it was a study, I don't know. I would just like your, you know, some responsiveness to that.
Definitely.
Is all I'm saying.
Since we will have more presentations on this, we will actually include that article in our presentation.
Samantha, do you have anything to say on this?
Sorry. There's a lot of thunder stealing going on right here.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I think the meaning behind homework is much more important because I know there were times when I was in middle school when I would have like 50 questions of math, and now I don't have that. I'm in calculus, and I might have like 20, and I understand it just the same.
20 calculus questions is not.
I mean,
that's the equivalent of 500.
That's a lot of questions still, but
I mean, it takes time, but I understand it.
So about how long each night do you spend doing homework?
Okay. Well, at the beginning of the year is always harder because the classes are transitioning, but there's nights where I don't really have anything to do, and there's nights where I'm up till 3 a.m.
Oh. Wow. And how many AP classes are you taking?
I'm taking 2.
Which, with most AP classes, the homework level is, and I've never understood that. I'd always be curious to find out why that was, and maybe your studies will explain that. But AP classes, it's almost like it's twice as much homework for an AP class when the logic makes no sense to me as a non-educator. You're teaching concepts. Yes, they're more difficult, but I don't see how working on them more provides a better understanding. I'm looking forward to seeing the next bit of these studies to see if there is a correlation to the AP homework levels too.
But I think you answered that when you commented on calculus. 20 calculus problems takes a long time.
Absolutely.
So the concepts in the AP classes are more in depth.
Right.
So they take
and
longer.
And that might be the solution is because of the depth. I don't know.
Well, and then I also find that homework assignments that are like more in depth, like I spend less time studying and trying to like memorize information before the test, so I'm more prepared in advance, so it's easier.
I think we should actually outlaw studying at all. Cramming is not allowed. Because
doesn't
in
work
the end,
anymore.
that doesn't
100%.
teach mastery of a subject. It
Correct.
teaches how well you memorize until tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been appreciative of, so you had a test a month ago. Guess what? We're giving you that same test now. Did you remember what we taught you a month ago? Because if you didn't, then we haven't done our job and we need to go back and recover those topics.
Yes.
And again, yes, it's more testing, but I think, to me, knowing it next year is more important than knowing it tomorrow for your test. That's got to be the measure.
It will be interesting to see if a teacher does an action. I wish I was a teacher right now. I would love to do this action research in my class to see if I'll ask the kids if all of us, or 80% of us, can get master the skill today, no homework. See if the attention span in class goes up and they pay attention and say, you know what? If we all pay attention, learn the content, and then we don't have to do homework.
Mm-hmm.
It will be interesting action research for a teacher to do in their classroom to see if there is a correlation. My hypothesis is there is. So.
I would tend to agree.
So back in 2008, Dr. Cunningham and I were both board members on the elementary board, and we spent 2 days with CSBA and went over every single board policy and brought recommendations back to the board for approval. And this policy got skipped because we felt that it needed more in-depth research. Well, here we are today, finally getting some in-depth research done. There's a lot of board policies that have been neglected over the years, and it was kind of mentioned earlier, but that's our responsibility.
Okay.
As a board, we are tasked with setting policy. And we're not expected to be experts in the education field. We're laymen that can take staff's recommendation, look at it from our perspectives as parents and community members, and set that policy. So with that, I would like to make sure that there is a process. I've said this since I've gotten here, that we need processes.
Definitely.
And I want to make sure that you mentioned multiple stakeholders. I'd like to make every opportunity to include parents
Definitely.
as much as we can in that process. And a policy for this board to approve that sets parameters and allows for teachers to do what they do. And Mrs. Hurst, thank you very much for your presentation. I appreciate the work that you do, and I want to make sure that if we have a policy, that teachers still have the flexibility to do what's working in their classrooms.
And thank you for staying so late tonight.
Yes.
Does this count as homework?
So,
Being at a board meeting? I'm curious. So did you do 2.5 hours worth of homework tonight by being here?
Did I?
Yeah, because you had to be here for 2.5 hours.
Spent a Saturday making slides.
No, I mean tonight. I think you're 2.5 hours tonight. You're good for the rest of the month.
Speak to my mentor and get some credit.
well, thank you for being here. Thank you for the work
Thank
on
you
this.
so
Thank
much.
you, Dr.
Thank you.
Gill. Before we move on, Samantha, thank you. Go home, do some homework. It's getting late.
It is getting late.
Okay, moving on. Item C, Citizens Bond Oversight Committee bylaws.
Just 2 quick points. Number one, we're still collecting names for applicants who want to serve on the Citizens Oversight Committee. We presently have 5 committed community members who are interested in those positions. So we're still working on that. But this is just a first read of the committee oversight bylaws that were recommended by Jones Hall, our bonds consultant. And next board meeting, they'll come forward for formal approval.
And how long is it, I mean, does the committee stay in effect for the full life of the bond, or?
They're 2-year terms. This would be like the beginning bylaws. However, bylaws can be changed. The formal approval process of committee members will come through the board. But we have a timeline of early October to get the committee formed. So we don't have to have all the positions filled, but we have to form it. So the bylaws will allow us to meet that timeline.
Do you know how long the committee stays in effect?
I
That's a
believe,
great,
I believe it stays in effect until all the bonds have been
Okay.
yeah.
sold.
Not just sold, but spent until we close the
Spent.
books,
Yes,
until
until-
she can
Correct.
issue a report
Yeah.
that says.
But not
Suspended.
repaid.
So not the 30 years,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
As long,
5
okay,
years,
for
4
having
years,
to spend
6
money.
years,
Okay.
whatever it takes to sell and
Sell and spend.
Till the last
finish
penny
the
is spent.
projects. Yeah, to finish the projects that the bonds are sold for, so.
Okay.
So, I
Thank you.
mean-
Anything further?
Nope.
Okay. Item D, biennial review of the conflict of interest, board policy 9270, and what's E?
This is a different code. It's a biannual review. We have to approve these 2 codes, the code BB 92070 and E 92070. But CSBA has come in this year and made some changes, so we're just bringing it forward for a first read and a formal approval at the next meeting.
Exhibit is what the E is. Yes. Okay. Any questions on the board from that?
I was trying to open it up. It's on page 238 of the packet, the conflict of interest code. It says, however, a board member may vote on collective bargaining agreements and personnel matters that affect a class of employees to which his or her relative belongs. May implies that they can, or they, it was characterized to me more like you should, like, and I specifically asked the question because my wife's the librarian, member of CSEA, and so I asked the question in training, and they're like, well, you're on the board, and, it's your obligation to vote your conscience on when it's a collective class of employees, a represented class of employees. And this says may, like I could opt,
You could. So, from my
abstain.
experience, I abstain because there is an individual in the community that every single time this comes up, every year, calls me out on it. So I abstain every year because I just don't want to hear it. So we have the option. You can abstain if you like, or you can vote. That's what the law says.
But really, I don't think that's any different than any other vote. We may vote on any of it, or we may abstain, right?
Well, you're not really supposed to
Not really.
abstain.
Yeah.
You're supposed to
You're not
vote
supposed
up
to,
or down
but-
on most things,
but-
unless you have a conflict.
But it's
or-
done.
Or,
Yeah, I mean, the abstention is supposed to be if there's a conflict.
Right.
but your relative isn't involved in collective bar, isn't that a different?
Anytime if there's raises with the classification, with that class, that's what it comes to.
Okay, all right.
So that's, and
So
that's,
you abstain,
I do.
okay.
But it's also, it's a class, but it's a singleton position. And what you're talking about is us taking action on a union raise.
That's right.
So I personally see that as a little bit different.
Because when I went to training, I thought, you know, I was like, oh, I should abstain. And they were like, actually, no, unless there's, you know, like on a collective bargaining agreement, your wife is such a small piece of that,
exactly.
that you really should vote your conscience. And, you know, so anyway, okay, so it's May. Got it.
So it's also important to note that what I can speak to is anytime there's a concern about anything that might be unclear, and we can't just answer it here. We have people who we pay to give us good advice to make sure that everyone is in a comfortable position for any vote.
Or we send Matt to CSBA to ask the question.
Or that.
That was my only question.
Okay.
Item E, band practice schedule and stadium.
So Alvina is going to speak to some of this, and I would ask Mr. Faubert to speak as well, just a little bit about the band practice schedule as we're developing our award-winning band program, and also how Alvina is leading the facilities use portion of her job.
Hello. So as you're aware, we had some issues with the track availability. After reviewing the facility use civic permits calendar, it was noted that the high school had quite a few events that were scheduled on the calendar, as well as an outside organization that was flushing right up against the time that the football team had finished playing, and then they were taking over the track field stadium after that. We did find a very small window in the morning that would be available before school started, and so Mr. Faubert and I were talking about, you know, the pros and the cons. If we had the custodian open the gated area, they would need to check the track to ensure that the track and stadium were ready for student use. So I think that that's one of the recommendations that I would make is if there was a window available in the morning, it would be a very small window. Obviously, with the daylight savings time, it's dark. We don't normally allow people to use the facilities. Do not think that we want to turn the lights on that early in the morning, but we're trying to very carefully monitor what's available and what we can make for public use. We want to do that.
Open public use. I want to
Open
make sure we
public
clarify
use.
that for open public use.
We also have in our facility use policy that we do not normally allow use of facilities when school is in session. So I think Mr. Faubert and I were talking about if PE classes were not using it, but again, I don't know that we want to open that window while school is in session.
How long does it take the custodian to check the facility to open up the track?
Well, he has to make full, the whole grounds. If there's an event the night before, sometimes they can't finish and they have to go in the morning and finish the facility. We are trying to ensure that we hire additional.
When you say finish, you mean like pick up trash or?
Pressure washing. Mr. Faubert probably sees exactly what's going on there, throughout the school day. Did you have anything to speak to that?
Yeah, so we were actually looking at the sunrise calendar today, and starting October 1st, it doesn't come up until after 7 o'clock. And pretty much we have kids coming on campus at 7:30. I think that the real, what Alvina is speaking to is a real issue here is a facility that's been developed for student use first, and then the board has given the superintendent, who then directed Alvina and then me, who's at the site, to establish a public use calendar, which we've done. And we have, with all diligence, done so in a way that we have looked for every available moment that open public use could occur. And I know that there's been insinuations about the fact that there's a bait and switch or whatever it is. But I assure you, as the principal of the site and as a person of integrity, a member of this community who has served in a number of capacities for a very long time, when I tell you that we have done everything that we can to find available open use at this time. Now, in, April and May, when we first did the pilot program, the stadium was being used less. We had one team, track, using the track. And at that time of the year, the PE teachers were not using the track during the regular school day. They were on a different unit. They were doing whatever unit they were doing at that time of the year. And at that time, they said, you know what, we're not using it for the last, I think it was just the last month of school that we did the pilot. And so at that time, the PE teachers were like, well, we're not using it for the last month. We're wrapping things up and we're doing a unit on badminton or something like that. And so there was a whole lot more time for use. And we published that. We were very detailed about it. We used a sunset calendar. We made sure that it stayed open until the sun went down. We monitored the use, which was very little during the week. And there was some use on the weekends, actually, because we don't necessarily have, band isn't practicing, our award-winning band, who has altered their schedule this year to provide less practice time during the week so students can do their homework and more practice. They've combined all that practice that they used to do during the week to the weekend, so the kids have more time during the week, and we don't, as far as homework goes, we do have a school procedure for homework, and our procedure says there's no homework on the weekends, and so we schedule band practice on the weekends. And we don't open the track on Sunday. Part of that is because we don't have the personnel to do that. We could ask personnel to come back and open up, but then we are further stretching our limited staff who then have to come back in on Monday, and they don't have a break. People need to have that. And so we literally, that track is used from the time school opens some nights until 9:30 because the junior Mustangs are out there with the lights on. And so quite literally from 7:30, and we don't really want people coming in and out to the track during drop-off time. Traffic's already a big enough issue. And I don't know that many people would be using it at that time anyway, because we have not seen use at those times. And we are using it all day for PE. As soon as school is over, we've got 3 football teams. We've got the band on Mondays and the band on Saturdays. We've got the Junior Mustangs renting it, and we've got revenue from that, yes. Right? We cannot find, you'll notice, we hope that the public will trust us, and we changed the notation before it just said no public track use at this time, and we changed it to say, I can't remember what the verbiage is. We changed it to very clearly state, at this time there is no available use due to school and outside facility rental usage at this time. That's just what it is. As we go into the winter, band stops in November, but then we've got 4 soccer teams that are going to be using it. And then in the spring, it will let up a little bit when we just have track out there. And so it's times of the year that it's going to happen. Now, I know that there's questions and things like that about other facilities that are being built that are going to be used. Definitely, those are things that have to be talked about. And I'm all for the usage of those facilities, but things like a pool aren't going to be used year-round like that by the school. We have swim team and water polo that will be used, and we'll have to talk about when are the times during the day. And that's a big revenue source too. If you contract with an outside organization to run, lane swimming time, or adult water aerobics, or child water, swim lessons and things like that during the day, definitely possibilities for that. But again, we're using the facilities as they were designed to be used at this time, and we are going to publish every minute that we can for open public use. At this time, there is none. And if any members of the public would like to come and sit down with me in my office and take a look at the calendars and what's going on those fields, they are welcome to do that. But I've already done it for them on the public track use calendar. They don't need to, but if they want to and check my work, they are welcome to do that.
I apologize because I am clearly a day late and $1 short. I've been working some really long hours at work, and the information and discussion item is band practice schedule and stadium. And Trustee Nielsen made a comment in governing board report, which I didn't really understand the implication of, but
So
this is really about public use, not
open
band
public
practice.
use. Open public use. And it's real important.
Thereof, because of band practice.
Yes.
And
that was
here's,
one of the big.
So the public is saying we shouldn't allow band practice?
No, it's actually, the statement was, and this is where, first of all, and I want to go back to something Mr. Faubert said because it's really critical. When we did this pilot, number one, we said it was a pilot. Number two, we said it would always be controlled by the needs of the school first. Always, period. And the fact that we also mentioned we didn't know what was going to happen because we didn't know how many teams were we going to have for football, were we going to add other sports, what other things could happen for open public use. People keep saying no one gets to use the track. The junior Mustangs use the stadium every single week. They are a public entity. They are not us. They are a private, better way to put it, entity that is not affiliated with the school, that pays for its use, that uses it when it's available. And if they want to allow people to run on it while they're in practice, that's on them. They rented it. It's theirs to use. This all came about because I would say I think the one concern I have about it is maybe the information could have provided to the public a little bit sooner, a little bit better. But in the end, it came down to we were told, one, we screwed the public, and two, we committed a bait and switch. When I provided the information that the principal provided to the public to say no, from 7:30 until about 9 o'clock, just about every night, and then from 9 to 6, I think it is on Saturdays, the band uses it. They seriously started attacking the band teacher. Well, why? He needs the whole stadium? That must be a huge band. Or, you really practice that long? That just can't be. Except no one, and that's where it goes back to a word Mr. Faubert used, and it's a beautiful word because it's a word I used before too, and it's called trust. Either you trust us or you don't. If we had screwed you in the past, I could get it, but we haven't. We've done everything we could with that stadium and track to do the best we can, including opening it up while school was in session, something I don't think you were all that comfortable with, but at least looked at it and said, I can make it work out. That's not good enough. We're still screwing the public because they can't use it when they want to use it. And quite frankly, I'm so beyond frustrated about it that I asked that this be discussed tonight to provide for the people who chose to show up or listen to this to see no one got screwed. There was no bait and switch. Your students are using the track all day, every day but Sunday. And unless you want to help us find a custodian who wants to be here on Sunday, which we can't find, we can't open it on Sunday. That's where it's at.
And I don't have a question, it's more of a comment. I think as much as I like to provide our facilities for public use, it has to come down to our students have to come first. That's what the district's about. That's what the facilities were built for, and that's just it. Our students have to come first.
I'd like to use the opportunity to thank our board members up here that are on the Facilities Use Committee. I know how hard, and Alvina, I know how hard that work is. You guys have been over backwards to try and accommodate the community, but I agree with everything that's been said. The students have to come first. And the comments that are being made out there that my tax money went, yeah, your tax money went for students. This is an education facility. Those are education programs. That's what it's intended for, the intended use, as you said. So I do, because of the need of the community and because of the lack of facilities, we need to do a better job at communicating.
I agree.
If there's anything we can learn from this, we just have to do a better job. So thank you for updating the site to articulate why.
Well, I think we can do a better job of just maybe communicating back out again. Remember, the calendar is here. The calendar is here. We've updated the calendar again. And so maybe every time we update it, because we go about a month out, and so maybe every time we update it, we just say, Please note it's been updated, and then we can say if there's less use than before, we can say, please note that this time there's less use because of. And that's probably something we could do better, right? I mean, we're communicating with the community through the calendar, but people forget it's there, and when there appears to be something different on it, we need to communicate that it's different, whether it's more or less hours.
Now that I'm kind of hip to the conversation, if you will, I haven't been on Facebook. Can you tell? I have to say, and state it publicly, if every single student in our high school decided they wanted to participate in swimming, and that meant that we had so many teams that we had to practice, we had to fill the pool all day, every day, I am not going to, now I know that's not going to happen, so that's idio ad absurdum, but I am not going to vote to limit student use because of a perceived promise. Now, I want the public to be able to use the pool, right? I do. But I'm not going to vote against student use for public use. It's just not going to happen. So
I would hope
start
no
now to get me over, start now to get me out of office in 2 years. If that's where you want to go, then I'm putting a stake in the ground or a line in the sand. It's about the students, and I don't think that saying the band is practicing where they're competing is a bad thing. I don't know how you can define that. So anyway.
And I think the public needs to remember our high school's been growing. We have more students. We have more programs to meet the needs of more students, which is a beautiful thing. And it's not that everything we do should be about students. It is about the students. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Must be about the students. Must be. It is, period. Yeah. So I thank you for all of the information. And
thank you.
You have 1,100 kids on the campus. Your facilities are going to be busy. And yes, our custodians need some time off. They have lives.
Thank you, Mr. Faber. Thanks, Shane.
Thank you, Alvina.
And just a quick thing, the footings for the pool have been dug, and so there is some actual non-topsoil scraping. It's like they're getting into some stuff now.
When do we get to go out and check it like it's one of the concrete ponds? Like back. I want to go jump in it while it's a hole.
I would say in the next week.
Awesome. I'm going to do that. Would I get in trouble for that? Is that something Turner's going to freak out
about? Have to wear a hard hat.
I will wear a hard hat.
Just don't dive in.
I can guarantee there will be many people voting for me to dive without a helmet.
It's getting late. Let's go. Item F, Taylor Farms update.
So there was a concern expressed. Dr. Gill did some research and looked into the concern regarding some employee matters in Taylor Farms, and she has a very short just update.
So good evening. Taylor Farms donates produce, fruits and vegetables typically to our students every year during farmers market. And there was a concern that was brought forward that Taylor Farm does not treat LGBT employees fairly. We did look at it. We contacted different organizations. And we, at this point, we have not been able to find any evidence to prove or disprove the accusations of unfair treatment of LGBT employees, if that's true or not.
Okay. So I would like to commend the district, especially Dr. Gill, on the relentless investigation she did into this issue. And I am dismayed that I was given information, and I've told a few board members I feel like I was used as a patsy in this situation, that it was not an LGBTQ issue, it was a unionization issue. And that should not have anything to do with our students and who is donating to this district. So I thank you for the research and opening, in particular, my eyes on this situation, that it's way deeper and it's way out of our realm, and they need to deal with their stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gill.
Thank you.
Moving on to the calendar, a lot of the committee meetings are noted. Please note the next regular governing board meeting is Wednesday, October 5th, 7 o'clock. In a moment, we're going to adjourn a closed session. We're going to be discussing item A, public employee discipline, dismissal, release, complaint. Item B, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. Item C, conference with legal counsel. And item D, conference with real property negotiator.
Move we adjourn to closed session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are now in closed session.